Act 1, Part 1 of Civilian Clothes by Thompson Buchanan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Cast, in order of appearance.
Billy Arkwright, 25, late Lieutenant, AEF. Read by Andrew Gaunce.
Nora, Maid. Read by Annie Mars.
General McInerny, USA, 50. Read by Todd.
Jack Rutherford, late Lieutenant. Read by Dave Courier.
Florence Lanham, 21. Read by Jenn Broda.
Mrs. Lanham, 55, her mother. Read by T.J. Burns.
Elizabeth, 20, her sister. Read by Ashley Jane.
Sam McGinnis, 27, late Captain, American Expeditionary Force, winner of the Distinguished Service Cross Medal. Read by Tomas Peter.
Mrs. Margaret Smythe, 29, friend of the Lanhams. Read by Sonia.
Bessie Henderson, 22, friend of the Lanhams. Read by AnamikaZack
Hart, 52, played by son of the exiles.
Mr. Lanham, Florence's father. Read by Alan Mapstone.
McGinnis Sr., read by Wayne Cook.
Bell Hop Boy, read by Mooninya.
Maid in Hotel, read by Kathi Marie Walsheck.
And stage directions read by Adrian Stephensediting. Scenes. Act 1. The library in the Lanham House, Louisville, Kentucky, winter of 1919. Act 2. Dining room in the Lanham home, a month later. Act 3. Scene 1. Parlor Hotel, Grunewald, New Orleans, a week later. Scene 2. Captain McGinnis's room, Hotel Grunewald. Act 1. Scene. The Lanham Library in Louisville, Kentucky, a handsome old-fashioned house. The room looks out on the smart street of the town. Big windows on the left. Entrance from the broad hall through double doors centre. Broad double doors on right covered with curtains lead into the dining room. Outside in the hall, broad stairs can be seen leading up to the rooms above. These must be practical, as at times in the action they will be used. The furniture is a mixture of the old and the new, as those showing two elements in the house. Mahogany, 200 years old, is mixed here and there with smart modern furniture, making a combination that, while rich and comfortable, would cause a modern decorator to expire in a delirium of horror. But everything shows wealth and position, and every piece taken individually is in good taste. A big board sofa is placed facing front, showing the fireplace is there. A handsome screen, upper stage right, partly cuts off the room on that side. The deeply recessed windows afford cushioned seats. Time, a winter afternoon in 1919. Discovered. At the Rise, Billy Arkwright is on the stage alone. He is seated on the divan facing front before the fire, imagined to be where the footlights are. About him is that do or die air of the man who has come to make a proposal, and is going through with it no matter what it costs. He is obviously nervous. He crosses and recrosses his legs, moves about on the seat, rises, walks to and fro, obviously going over a speech and arguments in his mind, reseats himself on the sofa, turns half sideways, goes through pantomime talking to imaginary girl, talks to himself so that the audience must get it from his lips, his expression, his pantomime, business with pillow. Florence, I love you, I've loved you always, I want you to marry me. He pulls out his watch, looks at it again, frowns as a man well satisfied, anxious to have it over with, goes over, rings bell on right, then returns to lower centre. Billy Arkwright is about 26, tall, dark, slender, handsome. His face, his figure, his manner all show unmistakably the breeding that comes from several hundred years of gentleman ancestors. He has both the good points and the bad points of his class to a marked degree. Physically brave, honest, honourable, he yet lacks the moral fibre to make a real success of his life, if he had to do so. He does not think very fast, and he cannot think deeply, but he is courteous. He loves everybody, and everybody loves him for his nature and weaknesses. His chief weakness is conviviality. He will drink with anybody, and he can't stand much. Nora answers the bell, entering centre. She is an Irish woman in her 40s, with remains of unusual good looks, and the air of the privileged servant who has been in the family at least 25 years and nursed the daughter of the house. She is thin, her face is sharp, and her tongue can be sharper when she lets it be. Between Arkwright and Nora is the air of people who have known each other for years. Nora is dressed in a maid's costume. Billy, elaborately consulting his watch.
Nora, does it always take young ladies just half an hour to dress?
No, sir. Sometimes it takes much longer.
I've been waiting on Miss Florence Lanham exactly 32 minutes.
Well, Mr. Arkwright, to my certain knowledge, we've all been waiting on you a couple of years.
Nora, you take base advantage of the fact that once you used to spank me.
And Miss Florence, too. I'll never know which of you needed it most.
Pause.
Are you sure Miss Florence is at home?
Well, she always is to you, sir.
Oh.
Besides, I think she was expecting you.
What makes you say that?
Well, sir, I've noticed ever since she got back from France, Miss Florence has been sort of, expecting something?
Something, pleasant?
Well, sir, sometimes it's pleasant and sometimes it ain't, but they all like to have it over with.
Oh.
I'll tell Miss Lanham you're waiting, sir.
Turns to exit centre. Billy crosses to Nora.
Oh, Nora.
Going up, she pauses and half turns.
Will you fix it so we are not disturbed?
Nora turns straight front. A grin comes to her face. She nods, he nods.
I understand, sir.
Goes to door, half pauses, affectionately.
Good luck, Mr. Billy. Now get it over with.
She exits centre. Billy draws the long breath of a man setting himself for an ordeal. There is a light noise outside the centre door. Nerving himself, Billy strides to the door, gulps a couple of times, prepares to begin with a rush. Billy, as door slams, speaks with rush left of door.
Florence, I've been waiting for...
For me, Mr. Arkwright?
Huh. Not by a damned sight.
Turns down centre in disgust. General McInerny is a West Pointer who has gone up fast on account of the war. He is a man between 45 and 50, of average height or a trifle under, beginning to enlarge a little at the waist, a smooth-faced, keen-eyed man of the world, and like most West Pointers, he has a good idea of the main chance and the advantages of the right sort of marriage. It is obvious that all the joy has gone out of life for Billy. He comes down, sits disgustedly, left end of sofa. The General looks at him keenly, moves down, takes another chair, right centre. A long pause.
Did you ever notice, Mr. Arkwright, the atmosphere of places? Now I'm peculiarly sensitive to it.
Really, never would have guessed it.
Pause.
Take this Lanham house, for instance. There's an atmosphere about this room that's unmistakable. An atmosphere, warmth of cordiality. Why, I've never entered the house that I haven't felt perfectly at home.
Sits on chair right of Davenport. Billy sits on sofa, centre.
I remember in France you used to tell us, General McHenry, it doesn't take a great deal to make an old soldier feel at home.
Precisely.
Pause. Billy glares at his watch.
40 minutes.
General looks at his watch.
Just 5 o'clock.
Billy innocently.
Time for retreat, General.
Generals don't stand retreat, Lieutenant.
Billy indicating his clothes.
Neither do civilians, General.
Pause.
You've known Miss Lanham a long time?
When the first settlers built a fort on this river to keep away the Indians, there was a family of Lanhams and a family of Arkwrights.
Mayflower?
No, Virginia.
Wonderful girl, Miss Lanham. Energetic, efficient, prompt.
Billy looks at watch.
Yes, prompt. 42 minutes.
Never will forget the first time I met her.
Billy doesn't pay much attention, though General talks on, pleased with his own ideas.
It was at the San Miguel show.
San Miguel?
Yes. After you had been transferred to the Argonne, we were getting troops up into position before the show started. I had gone forward past the brigade O.P. It was black as your hat. Had just gotten to one place where there was a shaded light, when who should I find there but a girl handing out hot chocolate to the doughboys as they came by. It was Miss Lanham.
Flo.
She was a Red Cross canteen girl, but that wasn't exciting enough, I suppose, for there she was right up almost in the front line with the Salvation Army get-up handing out chocolate to the boys. Hell, any man would fight when they saw women like that, you know.
You did not let her stay, did you?
Of course not. Ordered her back in a hurry.
Pause, chuckles.
Found out afterwards she didn't go.
Just like Flo. I never could make her do anything.
Wonderful girl.
Pause.
For some lucky man, she'll make a wonderful wife.
Billy rises, looks at the General with sudden alarm and suspicion. The General shifts uncomfortably.
Now I know what you're here for.
Nothing of the sort.
Stands up.
Oh, yes it is, all dressed up in your new uniform and all your decorations. You're here today to propose to her.
Ridiculous.
I agree with you.
Well, really, Mr. Arkwright, since you take that tone, I don't see what would be so ridiculous about a proposal by me.
Billy, turning to General.
Florence Lanham's not the girl to waste herself on an old man.
General, facing Billy front of sofa.
Waste herself? Indeed. While I do not think this sort of discussion is in the best taste, still, since you have forced it, I must say that I consider Miss Lanham too intelligent a lady to throw herself away on a young whippersnapper.
Billy, going to centre in front of sofa.
Declare yourself. Are you or aren't you?
Why, I...
Well, if you won't declare yourself, I will. I came here to propose this afternoon. Now, give me a chance.
Pause.
Well, since you are so bold about the matter, Mr. Arkwright, I'll be equally frank. That is what I came for this afternoon.
They look at each other. Pause. Billy, suggestively, sits left end of sofa.
I was here first.
General looks at Billy and sits.
I would suggest, in view of...
Nothing doing. That age before beauty stuff don't go with me.
Both sit obstinately. General sits right end of sofa. Long pause.
See here, young man. Doesn't it strike you we are acting like a couple of asses?
They turn and look at each other.
Speak for yourself, General.
But if we both stay...
I'll match you.
Up.
You're on.
Up. Swing around to right and left end of table. Each produces a coin, stand at the table just back of the divan as they put their coins down.
May the best man win.
Hell no. May I win.
We'll see.
John Rutherford at the door.
Hello, everybody.
Damn.
John Rutherford is tall, clean-cut, good-looking, good manners, good clothes, 25, and thinks on Tuesdays sometimes. Comes down, takes in picture.
Matching? May I get in?
Don't know.
Looks at General.
Say, Rutherford, when was the last time you proposed to Flo?
You've got your nerve asking that.
Billy to General.
Isn't he an ass? You know, every fellow in the town takes to Flo like the measles.
To Rutherford.
When was it? Last week?
Rutherford hesitates, shakes his head.
Well, I haven't seen her since yesterday.
You belong in...
Rutherford putting down his money.
Let me get this. What are we matching for?
Odd man wins. The other two get out and give him a chance.
They don't quit for good?
No, for this afternoon.
Oh, I can ask tomorrow just as well.
Yes, it might be a good idea to give her a day's rest. Everybody down?
Nods, they put coins down.
Everybody up?
All lift hands.
Heads.
Heads.
Heads. Damn it.
Florence Lanham at the door.
I hope I didn't keep anybody waiting.
All grab their coins and look innocent. Billy looks at watch.
50 minutes late and then comes a minute too soon.
Florence Lanham is 21, about 5 feet 4 inches, with fair hair and blue eyes. One's first impression is what an unusually beautiful person. To the ordinary observer, this impression of beauty, of self-possession, of assurance continues, but the discriminating man finds something disturbing. Proud, impatient of restraint, impulsive, lovable, and withal possessed of tremendous nervous energy, here is a crowded single-track mind which makes of her life a series of rear-end collisions. When the inevitable obstacle that should have been foreseen arises, she is apt to blame fate and override it, rather than to blame herself and try to get around it. She has never had anything she did not want ferociously, and never gotten anything she did not tire of immediately. Position, training, wealth have conspired to make her a snob, but she hates snobs when she knows them. Withal, there is tremendous happiness in store for her, and the right man who shall conquer her. Flo as the men leave the table.
This is jolly. Awfully nice of you to drop in.
Gives right hand to General, left hand to Rutherford, nods to Billy.
Hello, Billy.
Billy takes his own left hand with his right, shakes it.
Charmed, I'm sure.
General, very much the courtier.
You are always worth waiting for, Miss Lanham.
Thank you, General.
Sits on sofa left. Billy wheels the tea table in front of her.
You certainly came just in time.
Why?
Well, 2 of us were about to go.
Sits right of Flo.
Which 2?
Jack and General McInerny.
Jack and General McInerny, the 2 show hostility.
Me?
Nothing of the sort.
Nora enters, places cake on tea table.
I should say not.
Nora appears, rolling in tea table, from door right 1. Rolls it down beside divan in front of the group. She tries to pantomime to Billy that it's not her fault and she is for him.
Right here, Nora. You needn't wait, Nora.
Nora exits unwillingly, leaving tea wagon crossing to right and exits. Flo looks from one to the other.
Nora is an old dear, you know, but she's spoiled utterly.
She sits left end of sofa, begins to serve tea.
If I allowed her to stay, she would at least be telling you, General, what she thinks of the army, and putting Billy in his place.
I'd rather like to see someone put Mr. Arkwright in his place.
Stands. Billy, left of Flo, standing.
Nora can. Remember the time, Flo, she caught me kissing you and spanked you for leading me into temptation?
All laugh.
I remember nothing.
Flo hands cup, tea and cake to General, who takes it to chair right.
Rum.
Flo puts rum in tea and passes cup to General. Rutherford returns right, while Flo fixes cup for Rutherford.
All of your servants down here old retainers? For instance, that very imposing butler I've seen, with the knee breeches and silk stockings.
Knee breeches, that's a fad of Mother's. No, indeed, but Father discovered he was a slacker and discharged him on the spot. Now that the war is over, however, we are looking forward to the joys of competent men-servants once more. As a matter of fact, I notified the agency to send some today.
Should be plenty of ex-soldiers.
Imagine, after charging machine guns to come back to passing the soup. I tell you, Flo, advertise. Wanted, one butler only, DSC men need apply.
Takes cup from Flo, sits left on chair.
And if the dinner is dull, he can regale us with his adventures.
Flo, mischievously.
Oh, you think my dinner's dull, General?
No, none of that. Certainly not.
The tone is doubtful. I see I'll have to convince you. We'll make it a week from tonight.
Make what?
Dinner, of course. All of you.
Thanks.
Charmed.
Splendid. I'll
Thank
come.
you.
I'll be here
Good.
all night.
A long pause. The men settle back, determined to stay. Billy, luxuriously, leaning back on chair left of sofa.
I could sit here all night.
The General and Rutherford look at him.
And then some.
General, rising and crossing to right, hands Rutherford cup.
Going my way, Mr. Rutherford?
Business handing cup and napkin to Rutherford. Rutherford, indignant.
Say, I'm no kitchen police.
Crosses to sofa. Hesitates.
You going to stay, William?
Till the last lone man retires. And don't call me William.
Rutherford turns to Flo.
By the way, Flo, remember what we were discussing yesterday?
Billy sits bolt upright. The General turns sharply.
Yes?
Rutherford, leaning toward Flo.
Any chance of changing your mind?
Flo shakes her head.
No.
Billy to Rutherford.
Good night.
General, won't you have another cup?
Billy, rising.
No, they don't care for any.
Well, I'll be. Allow me, please.
Flo hastens to him. They talk in pantomime. Rutherford, cheerfully.
Well, see you tomorrow.
Starts as though to exit, stops, turns to Billy, who is grinning at Rutherford.
You needn't grin. 50, you don't put it over either.
Go to the devil.
General shakes hands, starts out with a bare nod to Billy, who grins at him fearfully. Flo comes down right centre, Billy down left end of sofa. Rutherford at door, taking General's arm as they go out.
Jenn, didn't have any better luck than I did.
I'd like to have you in my outfit.
Exit. Flo turns to Billy and they look at each other. Both sit on sofa. It comes over him that the time for proposing has arrived. She is cool, friendly. Billy looks at her, is suddenly panic-stricken. A long pause. Flo, after appreciable pause with rising inflection.
Well?
Quite well, thank you.
Another pause. After it has become pronounced. Simultaneously, turning to each other.
But...
Flo.
Both stop. Billy moves toward her on sofa.
I beg your pardon, you were saying?
There's something the matter with you, Billy. I'll get you some scotch.
Rises.
No. I am going to do this on my own.
Do what?
What I'm...
Pauses.
Poor Billy boy.
reaches over in friendly fashion, puts her hand on his.
Come tell Mother all about it.
Both sit. Billy shaking her hand off, resenting her friendly superior air. Desperately.
Oh, Flo, can't you help a fellow out?
Certainly. Now what have you been doing?
And I thought it would be so easy.
Flo, encouragingly.
Anything is easy if you really set your mind to it. Do like you used to do when you took medicine. Shut your eyes and go to it. Come now, tell Mother all about it.
Billy desperately shuts his eyes, holding her hand in both of his. Flo taking her hand away.
Billy!
No. I mean, will you be my...
Flo teasingly.
My children's mother, Billy?
Don't be an idiot.
Billy, I believe you're in love.
What did you think I had? A pain in my tummy.
Pause.
Well, say something.
I don't know what to say.
Nonsense. You were never in that fix in your life.
Flo's obviously disturbed, but plainly she is interested, even believes herself in love, but something is holding her back, making her try to avoid Billy's proposal.
Do I understand, Billy? You are trying to ask to be the father of those children about whom you are so eloquent.
Billy takes her hand.
Flo, I want to marry you.
Flo teasing to cover her own feelings.
Oh, I'm sure your intentions are honorable.
Please, Flo, stop teasing me.
Flo with genuine regret and feeling.
Billy.
Billy taking her hand again.
Say yes, dear.
I wish I could, Billy.
Billy in surprise, horror, and misery.
Flo, you don't mean that.
I can't, Billy. I just can't.
Why?
Don't ask me that.
Billy in the violent emotion of his love and the feeling of a man crossed the first time in his life.
Don't... Hell, you think I'm gonna let you turn me down without finding out why?
His anger and force move her much more than his pleading. Then feeling he hasn't been a gentleman, he weakens.
Forgive me, I don't mean to talk that way, but... Oh, Flo, can't you see this is everything to me?
Flo with sympathy.
Billy.
Everything, Flo. Why, ever since we were kids, I've never thought of anyone but you. There hasn't been a time since I can remember that I haven't looked forward to that day when we would be married.
Yes, I used to think so too.
We both thought so all our lives. Why, we can't remember when we weren't sweethearts.
Billy, don't.
Everybody that knows us expects us to be married.
I can't marry you now. I just can't.
Why?
There's a reason.
Hang the reason. Is it because I've been a bit wild, Flo? If it is, I'll cut it out. Honestly, I will. I'll be the good little man who brings the steak home under his arm 365 days in the year.
You dear boy.
I'll be your slave, Flo. I'll do anything, everything you want me to.
She looks at him, but he does not realize that he is on the wrong track.
I don't want you to do anything, Billy. No man gets a woman by doing anything for her.
Pause. Billy, with sudden suspicion, releases her hand and rises.
You didn't fall in love or make any promise to any man you met over there, did you?
Flo, her armour penetrated, gasps guiltily, stalls.
What an absurd idea!
I should think so. You aren't the kind of girl to become interested in any man you didn't know all about.
When he is not looking, she sweeps him with one glance that shows how little he really knows her. Flo, her words contradicting her looks.
Of course not.
After all, what could you know about a man you just met in France?
Yes, they all look alike, don't they, in uniform? But can you imagine me becoming interested in anyone not well born, Billy?
Billy, taking her hand again.
Hardly. The Lanhams aren't that way.
Sits. Pause.
Oh, why can't you love me, Flo? Give me some reason. At least I'm a gentleman.
Throughout the whole scene, Flo must have shown that she has been powerfully moved, that she believes she loves him, and several times she has wanted to go to him, but has been held back by some strong reason. Flo obviously casting about for a reason.
I reckon that's is, Billy. You were always too much the gentleman.
Too much the gentleman?
Yes, you've always been just that. My slave. You've never made me do anything. A woman has to be made to do things, Billy. Don't you understand? Oh, a lot of suffragettes can preach to the end of time, but that doesn't alter nature. And when I hear one of them declaring, "No man ever made me do anything," I always feel like saying, "Yes, but don't you wish he had?" And face to face with her own soul, if she's a regular woman, every time she'll say yes.
Billy, the idea sinking in amazement.
Has anybody ever made you do anything, Flo?
Flo, after a pause.
Yes.
Who was he?
That doesn't matter now.
What was it? Where was it?
It was in San Miel.
The General!
Oh, goodness, no! The General couldn't make anybody do anything.
Billy, relieved.
Oh?
It was the morning of the attack. I'd gotten up near the front and was putting out hot chocolate to the boys. The General ordered me back, but I slipped around out of his sight and kept on. The shells were coming over pretty fast when some of the infantry marched past to take position. I offered a cup of chocolate to a captain. He passed it on to one of his men, then asked me how the devil I got there. I told him I walked, and he said I better walk back again. I laughed at him. Next, he ordered me back. I refused to go. Then he called me a damn plucky little fool, boxed my ears as though I'd been a naughty child, and sent me to the rear crying with rage, my head ringing and a soldier holding each elbow.
He struck you?
Hard. I don't believe he realized his strength.
The cowardly brute. Who was he?
He was a man.
And you said you weren't interested in anybody. What's his name?
That doesn't matter now.
Well, it does matter.
There's nothing you can do. Now.
Why?
He's dead.
Pause.
With a Distinguished Service Cross.
For boxing your ears?
For extraordinary heroism in capturing a machine gun and killing 5 Germans single-handed. You see, he didn't limit himself to striking women.
All the same, he was a big rough-necked brute.
But don't you wish you'd done it? All of it, Billy. Even boxing my ears?
There's been a lot of times I wanted to.
Flo turns to him.
I wish you had. Oh, Billy, why didn't you make me love you? Why didn't you make me marry you before you went over there? It would have saved me so much.
Billy takes her hand.
I wanted to, Flo, but I'm not making any grandstand play, but, well, I thought I might get knocked off over there and it wouldn't be fair to you.
As though a woman ever asked a man to be fair when she loved him.
You did love me.
Yes, Billy, I thought I did.
Then I'll make certain of it. I'll make you love me if I have to beat you 3 times a day.
She is closer to him than she has been yet, half amused, half wistful, wholly moved, puts her hand on his.
Billy,
Feeling she is about to yield, Billy turns to her impulsively, just as Mrs. Lanham enters, accompanied by Elizabeth Lanham. Mrs. Lanham is short, she is fat, she is handsome, with the distinction and the manner that is popularly supposed takes 3 generations to acquire. She has more than a fair appreciation of the honour it will be to any man to become her son-in-law, and she is determined to choose a son-in-law worthy of her. Moreover, she has never forgotten that she was once a great beauty, and that she made a worthy marriage. She is about 60 years old. Ineligible young men have been known to call her the Dragon, but she does not know many ineligible young men. She is absolutely without humour. Elizabeth Lanham is what her mother was at 25, and she will be her mother over again when she reaches that age. Both Mrs. Lanham and Elizabeth are dressed for the street, and have evidently just come in. Both take in the situation at a glance, and their mutual delight shows that both completely misunderstand it. Elizabeth, gaily, back of table.
What did I tell you, Mother? There they are, wooing and scalawagging.
Billy rises, jumps to his feet guiltily, crosses to chair left.
Don't you believe it, Mrs. Lanham? I am wooing all right, but Flo is doing the scallywagging.
Mrs. Lanham, completely misunderstanding, comes down to divan.
I'm sure it wasn't very serious scalawagging, and I know you've both made me very happy. Billy.
Kisses Flo, holds out left hand to Billy. Flo gasps.
Mother!
Billy's face grows tragically blank. Flo sees the unfortunate position he is in.
Don't say a word. My mother caught your father and me the same way. We were married very shortly afterwards.
But Mrs. Lanham...
Guess. It wasn't much of a guess.
No, it wasn't.
Should say not. Perfectly obvious.
To Billy.
Wasn't it?
Yes, suppose so.
Grins from one to the other.
Do I kiss Billy, under the circumstances?
Does she kiss me, Flo? Under the circumstances?
I wouldn't have her miss it for the world, under the circumstances.
Elizabeth comes over, kisses Billy sincerely.
I'm awfully glad. We've all been waiting on you and Sis such a long time.
Elizabeth!
Have you?
It's time Billy was going.
Billy, what makes you so flustered? And Sis, why both of you?
Looks from one to the other, puzzled. Billy, obviously greatly embarrassed. He is embarrassed for Flo, she for him.
I'm not flustered.
Flo, with deadly calm, comes down.
Perhaps, Bess, you'd be flustered if...
Stops short. Mrs. Lanham, who hasn't paid much attention.
I think that's very sensible. A short engagement.
And a pink wedding? When?
Looks from one to the other.
I think...
I know Billy must be going. Come, Billy.
Starts up centre. Elizabeth crosses to Flo to stop her.
No, we'll settle this first. When?
Never.
Never?
Why?
Why?
Yes, never. You two walked in here and just jumped at a conclusion you both desired. That's all. Billy and I are not engaged, and as far as I know, haven't the slightest intention of becoming engaged.
Well...
But I saw... You mean you were just...
Scalawagging, Mother, scalawagging.
Sits. Mrs. Lanham is horror-stricken.
I don't believe it.
You're right, Mrs. Lanham. I was proposing to Flo and...
And he didn't get a chance to finish.
Goes into laughter.
Come, Mother.
Goes toward door. Mrs. Lanham, shocked to the bottom of her conventional soul.
Elizabeth.
To others.
Awfully sorry, terribly stupid. But, well, come, Elizabeth. I think we better leave the children alone.
Moves on to go. Flo signals to let them go. Billy won't.
Wrong again, Mrs. Lanham. She refused me.
What?
Turns about and sits down right centre, slowly with great dignity.
Well, will somebody tell me the meaning of this?
I can't very well marry Billy if I don't love him, Mother.
Mrs. Lanham to Flo.
Then what do you mean by waiting so long to break his heart?
Everybody is expecting it of you, Flo. At least you might be accommodating.
Flo looks over her shoulder.
Well, sis, why don't you marry him?
Elizabeth startled, but the idea is evidently not as distasteful as it might be.
Me?
Billy, at the same time, in voluntary horror.
Good God! I beg your pardon.
Elizabeth with wounded dignity.
Certainly. I don't think I can add anything to the discussion.
Exit, her feelings miffed.
But, Florence, you must be married sometime.
Not necessarily.
Mrs. Lanham, horrified to the depths of her soul.
Good gracious! I never...
Stops aghast just as Mr. Lanham enters centre. End of Act 1, Part 1. Act 1, Part 2 of Civilian Clothes by Thompson Buchanan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 1, Part 2. Mr. Lanham coming down left of Mrs. Lanham.
Hello. Elizabeth said you needed me, Mother.
Mr. Archibald Lanham is tall, slender, with white hair and a keen patrician, smooth face that shows intelligence, humour, and a fundamental kindly outlook on life and its foibles. It is the viewpoint of a man looking down on his fellow men. He has inherited wealth and acquired more through the practice of his profession, lawyer. Therefore, to the pride of birth and wealth is added the pride of achievement. If anyone told him he was a snob, he would unhesitatingly admit it and justify it.
Needed you? Father.
Tragically.
Archibald, your daughter is going to be an old maid.
Why the emphasis? My daughter?
Because no daughter of mine would be such a fool.
I think I'll say goodbye.
Flo grabs his arm and pulls him down on sofa, in alarm.
Billy, don't leave me with them.
Billy, with hope, instantly and obviously decides not to go, sits on divan beside her. Mr. Lanham to Mrs. Lanham.
Possibly, Elizabeth, if you leave this to me, I can get to the bottom of it.
Mrs. Lanham, with obvious unbelief.
Possibly, but I don't think so.
Sits on chair, right centre.
There's nothing to get to the bottom of. Billy just asked me to, well, speaking accurately, to be the mother of his children.
Billy opens his mouth to gasp.
What?
Well, of course, Billy. If you start your indelicacies before marriage...
There'll be nothing left to make a marriage interesting.
Billy rises indignantly.
I did nothing of the kind. I didn't even tell her she had to have any.
Flo pulls him down. Mrs. Lanham with sharp reproof.
Please refrain from discussing matters that are not necessary at present.
Mr. Lanham judicially.
Good. Obstacle number 1 removed.
Pause.
But, Dad, all this concerns Billy and me.
Granted, my dear, granted. That's why I'm asking. Now, my dear Florence, have you any deep-rooted objection to the married state?
How should I know?
Precisely. That's the beauty of the system.
Archibald, I think you're a perfect idiot.
He turns to her.
Whoever heard of any woman objecting before marriage? And if she objects afterwards, she'll only be like every other woman. Thank goodness my children are normal.
Then, Florence, is it that you know Billy too well?
Can you know them too well?
Coughs, moves up.
We, sometimes I've thought so.
Billy rises.
Now, Mr. Lanham, see here, I don't want to be passed on like a prize pig.
Billy Arkwright, nobody has pinned any blue ribbons on you.
Pushes him down again. Pause while all resume poise.
Is it because Billy has too much brains?
Billy brightens.
No.
A man of unusual intelligence is frequently hard to live with. Ask your mother.
Mrs. Lanham innocently.
I suppose one would be.
Mr. Lanham looks at her quickly. She goes on, relieved.
Oh, but that won't worry Billy.
Indeed.
You know there are many advantages to this marriage.
Yes.
Your mother and myself and Billy's parents have looked forward to it, dreamed of it.
Yes, but I'd be marrying him.
Billy jumping up.
I'm going.
Flo grabs his arm, pulls him down.
No, you're not going.
He subsides obediently. Mr. Lanham, with look at them that points his speech.
Daughter, believe me, you are making a grave mistake. With most couples, it would require years for their relationship to become so perfectly adjusted.
I don't want to be so well adjusted. Every woman likes to fight now and then.
Mr. Lanham, with sigh.
Yes, and even if they don't, they develop wonderful powers of self-sacrifice.
Keep to the subject, Archibald. The Lanham and the Arkwright places are side by side, and for years I've dreamed how nice it would be when they were together.
Mother, you can't marry a man just because he lives next door to you.
Why not? It's a much better reason than most people have.
Mr. Lanham turning left.
Have you ever considered this, Flo? We are the same kind of people, we Lanhams and the Arkwrights. We think alike. We've always been the best. We've always held ourselves the best. Now here in Kentucky we breed for a pure strain in our horses, and in the matter of marriage for ourselves and our children, we should be just as careful.
But in all breeding, isn't it a good idea now and then to cross the strain?
Florence, don't be vulgar.
Billy jumping up.
Oh, what's the use of continuing this? I'll tell you the real reason, Mr. Lanham. Flo did care for me, but she went abroad and got biffed on a man in France.
I knew she shouldn't have gone. I told you, Archibald.
Rises, moves to right. Flo sits quite white and still. Mr. Lanham, soothing Mrs. Lanham. For first time he is really downright serious. Turns to Flo.
Is this true, daughter?
Yes, father.
Mr. Lanham, he is anxious, determined. She, slender, calm, white but unafraid. After a pause.
Is he a gentleman?
An officer.
I said a gentleman.
Flo, indignantly, rises.
Of course he's a gentleman.
Then why do you refuse his name?
I told Billy he's dead.
Oh!
Sits chair right.
Oh.
Pause. Mrs. Lanham sighs with relief.
Phew.
After a pause.
If he were living, you would marry him?
Of course.
But he is dead.
Yes.
Then the greatest objection is removed.
Flo at his tone goes to pieces.
Oh, it isn't that. I just don't love Billy. I don't.
Goes up stage to centre. Stamps foot.
I don't.
Allow me to congratulate you. She'll elope with you in a month.
Flo in rage.
What?
Billy in amazement and delight.
What?
Undoubtedly. My legal experience of 30-odd years has proven to me that whenever a witness, particularly a woman, is unusually vehement, she is invariably lying.
Oh!
Of course. Every woman knows that.
Elizabeth, entering, comes down right, leaves door open, takes in picture.
Well, settled? Glad of it. Margaret Smith just called me on the phone, and I told her, in confidence.
She's the worst gossip in town. Oh, I hate you. I hate you. I hate every one of you.
Turns, rushes from room and upstairs. Mr. Lanham, calmly.
You see? Unusually vehement.
Nora appears at door left.
A man to see Miss Florence?
Involuntarily startled, all hold picture and look at one another. Mr. Lanham turns to her.
What's his name?
Didn't give any, sir.
A gentleman?
Oh, no, ma'am.
A general sigh of relief. Mrs. Lanham rises before Nora can speak.
Oh, of course. It's the butler they sent from the agency. Florence telephoned them. I'll have her see him.
She and Elizabeth exit upstairs. Billy crosses right to Mr. Lanham Centre.
You really think, Mr. Lanham, that Flo?
The feminine psychology, my dear boy, is nothing to think about. It's to pray over.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Crosses up right end of sofa and exits.
It's not the butler, sir.
Not the butler?
No, sir, I asked him. It's a man from France. Says he has a message for Miss Florence. From the dead, sir.
Mr. Lanham rises.
What's that?
Well, that's what he said, sir.
Ridiculous. Why should the dead want to talk to Flo? She's not at home to the dead.
Exit.
Show him in here.
Nora exits. McGinnis pauses at door. He is about 30, big, broad, with the straightforward way of looking at one that compels attention. About him is the quiet confidence of the trained bayonet fighter, and he carries the air of the man who has led men when they had to be led, and driven them when they had to be driven, and always gotten results. His very straightforwardness makes one overlook this shrewdness, and the humour that lurks in his background. He is dressed in a way to make a sensitive woman scream, a poor-fitting ready-made suit of rather loud design, a loud tie, a very low turn-down collar, very yellow shoes of the kind that are sold as nobby, and are a coloured handkerchief that shows in the outside upper left pocket of the coat as well-dresser at the gas-house ball. The barber has fixed his hair as only a barber unhindered can do. Nevertheless, the personality of the man is strong, even with the handicap of his clothes, to command respect.
Come in. Nora?
Nods her out.
Yes, sir?
Exits.
I am Mr. Lanham.
My instructions were to give my message privately to Miss Florence Lanham.
Your instructions from whom?
From the captain, sir.
Captain who?
My instructions, sir, were to say from the captain.
The captain is the officer about whose death she has heard?
Yes, sir.
Before you deliver this message, I have to say something.
Yes, sir, they are.
My daughter is, romantic.
Yes, sir, they all are.
But she is the kind of girl who recites Kipling in front of the fire.
I've heard her.
Do you know Omar Khayyam?
Sure.
She discovered him.
McGinnis smiles.
Yes, sir. I heard the captain tell her if she'd bring him a jug of wine, she could cut out the thou.
I should like to have known your captain.
Pause.
My daughter has a single-track mind and...
I see. No management. Rear-end collisions.
Nods eagerly. Mr. Lanham nods.
So, under the circumstances, since he is dead, I don't wish any collisions, understand?
McGinnis, with obvious sincerity.
Yes, sir. The last thing that my captain would want would be for Miss Florence to suffer 1 minute on his account.
I'll send Miss Florence.
Crosses up centre, starts to exit. Pause. Crosses around right end of sofa and up right.
You seem to be the kind of man to be depended upon. Later, if you need a job, I think I could find something for you.
McGinnis, with a meaning Mr. Lanham doesn't catch.
I'll probably see you later.
Mr. Lanham exits upstairs centre. Left alone, McGinnis looks about the room, crosses to left, dusts shoes with handkerchief. Busy with handkerchief as he crosses up to centre, door, and looks off, then takes pocket mirror and fixes his hair, then looks off, door right, returns to centre door, sees Flo coming down the stairs, and takes strategic position behind curtains up left, just as Flo enters. She comes in centre, looks around, sees no one, but he is in view of the audience all the while. As she appears, his face is transformed with longing and love for her. He slips into her view, in front of sofa centre. Then she hears him. She turns, gives a wild gasp of amazement, joy, love, starts toward him, coming forward right centre. Flo, she is going toward him eagerly.
Sam!
McGinnis, his arms outstretched from the bottom of his soul.
Flo!
Why,
Sure it's me.
Flo stops as though struck with a club. For the first time she takes in his appearance. The light goes out of her face. Absorbed in his love and his joy at seeing her, McGinnis does not notice. He steps over and enfolds her in his arms. She submits without returning his embrace. Her face is up to his, her eyes close defensively. The audience must see her hands held at her sides, clenched, as she submits to his embrace and kisses. Her action is beyond her control entirely, involuntary. At first he does not realize it in the slightest. McGinnis, holding her tight, kissing her.
You do fit there, don't you? Just like you used to, Mrs. McGinnis.
Her hands at her side clench.
Mrs. McGinnis.
That's your name, isn't it, darling? Mrs. Sam McGinnis.
Yes, I suppose so.
Suppose so? Well, there's no doubt in my mind. Why, the last thing I thought when I jumped into that machine gun nest and went down was you. And you know the first thing I said when I came to in the field hospital? I was lying on my back looking up at the clear sky, and I said, Why, it's just the color of her eyes. And then I passed out again and didn't come to for weeks.
Pause.
Aren't you glad to see me?
Yes, of course.
McGinnis lets go her hands, grabs her face, and covers it with kisses. She merely submits.
God, it's great to be alive and back with your girl again.
You were reported. I thought you were dead.
Well, you see, in the mix-up, one of the Fritzies made a poke with his bayonet and just ripped off my dog tag. It was weeks before I could tell him who I was.
Oh.
I told him a lot about you, though.
Pulling her over in front of couch.
Why, for 3 solid weeks, delirious, I was talking about you. Why, they never did call me in that hospital anything but Florence's husband. You're famous all over France.
Flo sits end of sofa right, the strain in her voice.
You should have let me know. You should not have surprised me. You shouldn't have come.
With a look that takes in his appearance.
This way.
McGinnis, her viewpoint striking him for the first time, sits, takes her hand.
I'm sorry. Honest. I never thought of it that way. You see, I tried to establish communication with Miss Florence Lanham of the Red Cross, because I didn't want them to send you back for marrying over there. And I found out you'd already come back. And then I didn't cable because I thought how much fun it would be to surprise you. And I waited to get well and strong because I didn't want my wife's first job to be nursing a half-man.
You are all right again.
McGinnis pats her hand.
Sure. Didn't I hold you like I had my strength?
Pause.
Nobody here knows I'm married.
Then you kept our agreement.
Takes sofa pillow and sits on it. She nods. A long pause.
Remember that night, sweetheart, when we marched back from the front to the little village in Repos? It was dirty and tired and ragged and unshaved. Didn't look much as I look now, did I?
Gets out cigar and lights it. Flo with the bitterness she can't keep out of her tone.
No, you didn't.
Pause.
You were glorious then in your captain's uniform, with your croix de guerre and double citation, and everybody crazy about you and the things you had done. You were glorious. Then.
He pays no attention.
You were standing in the door of that little hotel. I turned the corner dead to the world, and then I saw you, and you looked at me, just looked at me, and I was walking on air. Flo, do you remember?
Yes, I remember.
She is looking straight forward, and it begins to come back to her.
And we went out in the moonlight, and I started to tell you how ashamed I was for boxing your ears, and you made me show you those foolish medals. And then I can't tell how or what happened, but the first thing I knew, I was holding you tight and telling you things I didn't know it was in me to say, and you was just looking with your eyes like great big stars. Do you remember?
Yes. Yes, I remember that night.
And when we came back to camp, and I told the Dominie what we wanted him to do, didn't he rave? It was against orders. It would cost him his job and break me and send you back to the States. My, but the old fellow was hard-nosed. Then what you said to him, I'll never forget it. He's my man, and I'm going to him, so you'd better marry us, hadn't you? You remember?
Holding her right hand with his right. Flo drawing a long breath.
Yes.
And a week in that little village. Our honeymoon. 1 week of perfect joy with the old guns booming up bare ahead and men dying and us living as we'll never live again. Do you remember, Flo?
She nods slowly.
And the last morning, when I left the Argonne, you were standing in the same doorway where I saw you the evening I came in, and I marched past at the head of the old F Company, and you stood there looking at me with your eyes big and your face dead white, but trying your damnedest to smile. God bless you.
Patting her hand.
And I turned the corner, afraid to look back.
Oh, if we could only have that time again.
That time? What's the matter with this?
Slaps her on the back. Flo rises suddenly. She looks at him, droops. Pause.
All right to smoke in here?
Yes.
She nods. McGinnis blows out smoke, crosses his legs, leans back comfortably in one corner of the divan. She, every sensitive feeling in her outraged by his commonness, the way he smokes, the way he leans back and crosses his legs, and his general attitude. He pokes his finger in his right ear. She looks at him, rises quickly, almost involuntarily. He does not rise, crosses to right of sofa.
What's wrong?
Nothing. Nothing that you'd understand.
McGinnis good-humouredly.
All right.
She moves to upstage, slightly turns, looking at him. He cannot see her. On her face is all the hopelessness, the tragedy of her dead romance, the realization that from her civilian point of view she is married to a crude, provincial, good-hearted roughneck, miles beneath her socially.
Isn't it great to think we can pick up our lives and carry on just where we left off?
Can anybody do that?
Why not? We've only had 1 week, and we've got 40 years ahead of us.
Flo downstage, She looks at him, shudders.
40 years.
Oh, by the way, here's something you might like.
Reaches hand in his pocket, pulls out the Distinguished Service Cross, tosses it to her. Flo, catching it.
What is it?
Distinguished Service Cross. Gave it to me for the Argonne show.
Flo sits on sofa, with fierce eagerness trying to reconstruct her hero.
Tell me about it. How you got it. Everything. Make it heroic.
Just like a woman.
Shakes his head.
What did you get it for?
Self-defense.
Don't be absurd. Tell me everything. Oh, if you could only understand how much I want to make you my hero again.
Stops with look of involuntary distaste.
Well, I told you. Self-defense. You see, some of those Fritzies were going to kill me, and I killed them first. That's all.
That was splendid, of course.
Hands it back, rises and crosses right.
And I'm awfully proud that you got it.
McGinnis, a pause. He looks about the room with admiration.
You know, it's funny to think of you being rich. You never told me anything about your people, and over there I thought you were just a poor nobody like myself. If I'd realized all this...
Indicates room.
I don't think I'd have had the nerve.
When he begins to realize her snobbishness, McGinnis begins to pile it on and broaden his effects to be a little coarser than he really is. At the same time, by his acting, over-elaboration, and side looks at her when she is doing this for effect, and really having a little fun with her, at the same time not realizing fully how deep her feeling is. Flo, with unconscious snobbishness, turning to McGinnis.
The Lanhams have always been what you call rich and the best people. My father is the best lawyer in this state.
McGinnis smiling at her pride.
Well, my father is the best shoemaker in Racine.
Flo with distaste.
A shoe manufacturer.
McGinnis rubbing it in.
Yes. Makes 'em all himself by hand, and nobody turns out better ones. Look.
Holds up feet. Flo in absolute despair.
A cobbler?
We'll visit him when we leave here.
Oh.
She looks about wildly.
He'll be proud of you. He has a cottage, 6 rooms, right next to his shop. We can rent from him.
Flo, completely overwrought, sinks on chair right of sofa and bursts into a choking sob. McGinnis crosses to her. Instantly, when she breaks, his attitude changes. He cannot altogether understand why she is so serious, but he is remorsefully tender, puts his arm about her. Flo shrinks from him. McGinnis rises to right of her.
I didn't mean to hurt you. Why, I wouldn't hurt you for the world.
I know you wouldn't. Knowingly.
I was just...
Starts to say, teasing, she cuts in.
Oh, Sam, those clothes, that tie, those shoes.
Points to them. McGinnis, in amazement.
You ain't crying over the shoes. These clothes.
Spreading himself like a peacock.
Pretty nifty, I thought.
Flo, sniffily.
Nifty. Yes, I suppose so. Pretty nifty. And we are going to visit your father, the best cobbler in Racine, and he'll think they're pretty nifty, too. Florence Lanham's father-in-law, the best cobbler in Racine.
Laughs hysterically high. He crosses to right of her. A flash of anger shows on his face. Then he restrains himself, looks at her with a smile.
You're his son.
McGinnis with sincere pride and straightforwardness.
Yes, and I happen to be proud of my father.
Leaning toward her. Flo rises.
I'm sorry.
Pause.
Sam, will you do something for me, just because I want you to?
Rises.
Of course.
Will you go back in the army again?
He looks mutinous. Pause. Shakes his head.
I can't do it. Flo.
But you were a brilliant officer with a great record, the Croix de Guerre, citations, the Distinguished Service Cross. Why, you'd go up so fast. You'd be someone I could be proud of. You'd be as good as anybody.
McGinnis trying to change her mood.
I never saw an Irishman that wasn't better than anybody.
Flo, pleading, moves toward McGinnis.
Won't you? For my sake. It's our chance of happiness. Sam.
I can't be a quitter. Even for you, Flo.
Quitter?
I was a civilian soldier and did my bit. Now my duty is again as a civilian. I'm going to become somebody. I'm going to take you away from all this foolishness. I'm going to take you to...
Racine.
If you're my wife, you'll go with me to hell.
Flo, turning away, facing audience.
I'd rather go there than to Racine.
Did anybody ever tell you that you were a snob?
Flo looks at him, quickly justifying herself.
I'm not a snob. I can't explain it, but it's something. The clothes, it's what they stand for. Although when I first came in and saw the clothes, before I saw your face, I thought you were one of the applicants who had come for the butler's place. But it's you, Sam. It's the way you look and act.
Flo crosses and stops below sofa.
Something that makes me want to get away when you touch me, Sam.
And you're my wife.
Bows head. Flo ashamed of herself, but determined.
I hate myself for it, Sam, but I can't help it. It's been growing since the moment I saw you. Over there, we were all trying to do one thing, and the bigness of what we were trying to do blotted out all differences and made us one. But over here, it's not that way. We belong to different classes. Sam.
Realizing her tragedy.
And I'm afraid they don't mate.
McGinnis, looking out front. Pause.
And when I got myself shot to pieces and gassed, I thought I was helping to make the world safe for democracy.
Flo, horrified at an attack of a fetish.
Sam.
McGinnis, throwing cigar in fire, crosses to her. She turns right.
Yes, Mrs. McGinnis, you're a damned sight worse snob than I took you for.
Flo turns to him.
Of course, I'm common and vulgar and got no manners. I know it. You've been doing nothing all your life but learning manners. My manners I got from the streets and my education from night school, but I've made a civil engineer of myself and I'm going up. Manners and sensations. That's what you and your kind live on. That's what you went to friends for. Just to get a new sensation. And you met me. All right. You're my wife. And now I'm going to give you another sensation.
Flo turns to him.
You and I are.
I can't go through with it, Sam. I just can't.
You know I worship you, Flo. And you are making me wish I hadn't come back from France.
Don't.
Pause, turning to him. Puts her hands on his arms.
Don't you realize it's hard for me too, Sam? Do you think it's easy for a girl to have all her dreams shattered? You want me to be honest, don't you? You wouldn't want me to go through with it, looking down on you and learning to hate you.
Pause while he tries to get her point of view.
Looking down on me? You mean because my father is a copper?
Flo sits. Pause. Sits on sofa, centre. McGinnis crosses up centre and down.
Abe Lincoln was a rail splitter, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the haughty beauties who turned him down afterwards regretted it.
With lame attempt at humour to hide his heartbreak.
Of course, if Dad were a bad cobbler, I would understand it, but...
Turning again to her.
I'm a civil engineer myself. Yes, Dad made the money with his own hands. That's why I'm proud of him.
Please.
Pause.
I didn't say it was that.
You're no fly up the creek, so I won't insult you by asking you if you love another man.
It isn't that.
Pause. McGinnis turning again to her.
You mean you just don't love me anymore?
Sam, it's...
Then my clothes and my manners have killed it.
Forgive me.
Nothing to forgive. Feelings are feelings and have rules of their own. Only clothes and manners.
Pause. Shakes his head.
I thought a woman loved a man because he loved her. Because he was a regular fellow and would take care of her and be kind and decent and thoughtful. I guess that only shows how little I knew of women. Clothes and manners. That seems a little thing to quit loving a man for.
Crosses to her.
You know, I believe I'd keep on loving you if you chew tobacco.
Flo, horrified, turns to him.
Chew tobacco.
Yes. I just began chewing too, so I wouldn't notice it.
Crosses right, back of table, down to the front of sofa. She stands at left end of it. He is right of her. Flo, rising.
That's it. I'm afraid I'd begin chewing tobacco too.
Pause. McGinnis, his face suddenly lights, goes right after her.
Yes, Mrs. McGinnis, you are a snob. In fact, you're about the funniest, dearest little snob in the world, but I'm damned if I'll admit you don't love me. I'm damned if I'll admit you're that little, and I'm damned if I'll let you admit it either. I have an idea.
What are you going to do?
Do? You're a snob. I'll be a snob too.
What?
No. I'll have manners, and while I'm learning, I'll educate you too. I'm going to give you a little lesson in democracy.
You mean you are going to learn manners from me?
Good Lord, no. I'll learn them from only people who have them. The servants.
The servants? I don't understand.
Perfectly simple. I'm going to take that job in this house as butler that seems to be vacant.
Preposterous. You shan't.
Who is going to stop me? Your father promised me a job.
She is too horror-stricken to speak.
Yes. I'll learn manners, and even if you don't learn democracy, a butler husband ought to be a pretty good cure for snobbishness.
Flo, following him, grabs Sam's arm.
Sam, you're mad. You can't do a thing like that. You can't, and you're not going to. They won't employ you. I won't permit it.
McGinnis, turning on her.
If you don't want the full story of this marriage to come out, if you don't want your divorce fought to a finish in the open, and you know I'll fight to a finish, you'll permit it. Where do you think your proud Lanham name would be? Do you think there would be such sympathy for a wife who deserted her husband after he was wounded and had won 2 decorations?
That's cowardly.
Of course it's cowardly. But I'm fighting for my happiness. I'm fighting for your happiness. I'm fighting to open your eyes, to change you from a poor little snob into the real woman you have it in you to become. And I'll do anything to win because the stake is too big to lose.
The full force of his determination overcomes her. She realizes he is going through with it, and the horror of a public exposure seizes her. Flo turns to him.
You'd make it public?
McGinnis, realizing he has won.
On the front page of every newspaper.
Sam, I'll stick. No matter what I think, I'll stick. Let's go away together. I'll go with you anywhere. I'll go to Racine.
No.
Shakes his head.
Please take me to Racine. I promise. Honestly, I won't.
Look down on my father. Oh, that's not what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid he'll look down on you.
What?
McGinnis, apologetically.
He's very old-fashioned, you know. He wears horn-rimmed spectacles and chews tobacco. I can just see him sitting on his bench working over a shoe, chewing tobacco and looking over his specs at you.
Crosses and sits on left end of sofa, takes bookend from table, acts out picture.
Yes, Sam, she's a good looker, all right, and she sure is highfalutin. Can she cook? No, Dad. Make clothes? No, Dad. Keep house? No, Dad. Take care of the baby? No, Dad. What are you going to do with her, son? Put her in the movies?
Rises, crosses to her.
Then how would I feel? No. I won't take my wife to my father's house that I'd be ashamed of. I'm a snob, and I couldn't stand for my wife being looked down on by the best cobbler in Racine.
You'd be ashamed of me.
Now don't hit the ceiling, and above all, don't get discouraged. After I've educated you, you'll be all right. Why, I'll make you so I can take you into the poorest house in this land and not be ashamed of you.
She collapses, beaten, sits chair right of sofa.
Oh.
Feeling he has beaten her, McGinnis's attitude changes. He becomes tender, sympathetic, his love showing forth.
I wouldn't be so hard, darling, but I have to. You don't know how much I love you.
It's a queer way of showing it.
If I don't make good, I won't hold you, I promise.
You mean if you can't learn, if you stay as you are?
You'll be free. No one knows of our marriage. No one need know. We'll go away quietly. After a time I'll get a divorce, or you can get a divorce in some other state. It can all be hushed up, and none of your friends need ever know of your disgrace.
Your word of honor?
Yes. If you play the game fairly, give me a chance. Is it a go?
Holds out his hand. Enter Mr. Lanham, right. Flo crosses to left. She nods as Mr. Lanham enters. McGinnis turns to Mr. Lanham, moving towards Mr. Lanham.
You said something about a job, sir.
Yes?
I was speaking to Miss Lanham. I'd like to try that job as butler.
Butler? You?
Mrs. Lanham and Elizabeth enter, come down left.
Betty, what do you think of this man for butler?
Elizabeth laughs. Mrs. Lanham sits on sofa left.
That man? Archibald, don't be ridiculous.
Why don't you give me a chance, ma'am? I'll make good. I'm strong enough for the job.
Being a butler is hardly a question of strength. What's your experience?
I was mess sergeant of the company once. They busted me for busting a fresh cook, but I was mess sergeant once, and I've been KP lots of times.
I don't see, Archibald, what put such a ridiculous idea in your head.
Why won't he make a butler? His manners are almost bad enough to be a gentleman. Don't you think so, Flo?
I think...
I've been gassed, sir. I ain't fit for heavy work.
That decides it. I'm not going to turn down a soldier.
Crosses to Mrs. Lanham, sits on sofa.
Besides, Zack Hart is coming down from New York in about a month in connection with the biggest deal we've ever had. And you know how you'd feel entertaining him without a butler.
I know how I'd feel entertaining him with this kind of a butler.
Nonsense. Teach him. Flo, you'll teach him, won't you?
All right, Father.
It's on your head, Archibald.
To McGinnis.
What's your name?
McGinnis, ma'am.
McGinnis? While you're here, your name will be Dodson. I always call my butler Dodson.
Dodson it is, ma'am.
That will do, Dodson. You take him in hand, Florence.
McGinnis turns to Flo. Flo embarrassed.
Dodson, go to the dining room. Nora, the maid there, will tell you what to do.
Yes, miss.
Turns, stalks out, a soldier at attention. Mrs. Lanham, critically.
He has a figure.
Elizabeth, looking after McGinnis.
I bet he'd be wonderful in silk stockings.
I was thinking of that. He probably has beautiful legs.
To Flo.
Flo, what do you think of his legs?
McGinnis reappears at door to Mr. Lanham.
All right, boss. Grub's ready.
Lanham laughs. Mrs. Lanham and Elizabeth sink back in horror. Flo expression of horror as curtain falls. End of Act 1, Part 2. Act 2, Part 1 of Civilian Clothes by Thompson Buchanan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Civilian Clothes, Act 2. Scene: the Lanham dining room, an old-fashioned room with a conservatory opening at the back. The room is seen at an angle, the upper right-hand corner being the deepest point. From there, the rear wall into which the conservatory opens runs at an angle. The conservatory is entered by glass doors. In the extreme right-hand corner of the rear wall is the service door. The right wall, centre, has a large, handsome fireplace service table of mahogany. The left wall is taken up with double doors entering from the drawing-room, and a large, old-fashioned mahogany sideboard. In the centre, parallel with the rear wall, an oval mahogany table of old design. The table is laid for a dinner of 10. The furniture of the room is mahogany, and on the walls are portraits of the Lanham ancestors. The whole effect of the room is heavy, old-fashioned, rich. Time: just before dinner, a month later than events in Act 1. Discovered: at the Rise, Florence and Mrs. Lanham are inspecting the table. Both are dressed for dinner. McGinnis, wearing black dress coat with brass buttons, striped vest, satin nicks, and silk stockings, enters right, takes tray with wine bottle from serving table right, and crosses left, and places same on sideboard.
Yes, Dodson, I think the table looks quite well.
McGinnis, in carriage, speech, manner, he has become the model butler.
Thank you, madam.
I left my lorgnette.
Here, madam.
Gets it from sideboard.
Now, bring me the cards and I'll place them. I left them...
On the desk in the library, madam.
Yes, of course, that's it.
McGinnis bows and exits left.
I don't know how I ever got along without that man. In 1 month, Dodson has become the best butler I ever had.
But suppose I don't like him.
Then, my dear, you had better marry Billy and have your own establishment.
Mr. Lanham enters left, goes back of table.
How's your table, Betty?
Everything will be all right if your daughter will let me alone.
Florence, how many times have I told you not to bully your poor weak mother?
It was just a simple thing.
Simple. She'd like me to discharge Dodson.
Discharge Dobson?
Whistles, shakes head.
Oh, Florence.
But I just can't stand the man.
Florence, don't let me ever hear you speak that way again. Remember, there is but one man a well-bred woman just can't stand.
Mr. Lanham to Florence.
Yes, dear. Her husband.
Oh,
McGinnis re-enters.
The cards, madam.
Hands her cards. She moves over to table to place them.
Remember, Betty, this dinner must be a success. Zack Hart has come down to talk over some very important business. It means a lot to all of us.
I don't think that I have ever failed you socially, Archibald.
No, my dear, you never have. Socially.
How are you going to place them, Mother?
Oh, Billy will be next to you.
Places cards, sets herself at lower end of table, downstage centre.
My place. Mr. Hart on my right.
Then Florence.
Nonsense. I'll put Billy on my left, then Florence.
But who is next to Hart?
Archibald, if you wish to arrange the table.
Not at all.
Dadson, place Mrs. Smythe next to Mr. Hart.
But...
Crosses to Mrs. Lanham, down centre.
New York men like widows. They know more, or at least can afford to admit it.
Hart wants to talk business.
Well, he can't talk business too fast for Margie. She eloped with her first husband when she hadn't known him a week.
Oh, very well. Fix it to suit yourselves.
Stalks out left.
I'll place Elizabeth on your father's left and Bess on his right. She's utterly insipid. That will leave his mind clear for his business. Dodson, put Mr. Rutherford between Miss Florence and Miss Henderson, and General McInerny opposite. That settles. Now, have the fire started properly, and look at the candles in the living room.
Starts out left.
I'll see if the cocktails are just as Daddy likes them.
Starts to right.
I've already fixed the cocktails, miss.
Mrs. Lanham at door left.
And Dodson?
Yes, madam. The glasses are to be kept full, particularly Mr. Hart's.
Exactly. And those special hickory logs for the fire.
Selected them myself, madam. Anything else, madam?
No. If there is, I'm sure you'll think of it.
Exits.
Will you try a cocktail, miss?
No.
Yes, miss.
Goes to serving table and brings down a cocktail on tray.
Cocktail, miss?
No.
McGinnis drinks cocktail.
Thank you, miss.
She turns away from him, puts down the glass on tray, and returns same to serving table. Turns back with determination.
Sam, I want to talk to you.
McGinnis stops, arranges the logs on the fire, rises, facing her.
Yes, miss.
His attitude is perfectly respectful, perfectly unemotional, when she is looking at him, but behind it lies the humour of the strong man playing with a child. Only when she isn't looking, he must show his heart break, the love, the longing, and the passion of a man making a desperate fight for his happiness. He must put it over, by gesture, by attitude, by facial expression, and do this only when she is not looking.
Sam, I can't stand this 1 minute longer.
Yes, miss.
Will you stop that nonsense and be human?
Yes, miss.
Don't say miss to me again.
Yes,
Catches himself guiltily. A pause.
Will you do something for me?
Buttling under your mother is doing a good deal for you.
I mean something else.
Chauffeur or chef?
Sam, I want you to give up this place.
McGinnis with affected horror.
Stop buttling. Oh, Flo.
I'm not laughing.
No. You are positively heartless. Stop buttling when I'm learning manners so fast. When meals are so regular and you meet so many nice people. That's the way. No matter what a man's dream may be, he can always depend on his wife to wreck them.
You don't mean that permanently you would...
Why not? It is an ancient and an honorable profession.
I do believe you have the soul of a servant.
Turns away from him.
I've the job of a butler, miss. I am a married man. I have to look into the future.
She crosses angrily to left.
So far it has been quite amusing. And, lucrative. In case, miss, you should need a new hat or even a fur coat, it is not above our means. Mr. Rutherford, General McInerny, and particularly Mr. Arkwright have all been most generous.
You mean you've taken tips?
Taken them? I've held them up.
Beams on her.
That decides it. I'm going to divorce you.
Yes, miss.
I tell him I'll divorce him and he says Yes, miss.
Crosses to left, near the end of her rope.
I hope you'll do nothing hasty, miss. Mrs. Lanham is very conservative. A scandal might cost me my place.
Flo laughs, almost hysterically.
You were to test the cocktails, miss. Better let me get you one. If I may suggest, they are always helpful.
Very well.
McGinnis crosses up side table. Flo below table stands watching him. He brings her a cocktail. She drinks it hastily. Pours. Laughs.
You can mix a cocktail.
Very sweet of you to say so, miss.
Takes glass and puts it down on sideboard.
I could have stood everything but this. Don't you see the position you've gotten me into? Oh, if I'd only had the courage to face the notoriety, the unpleasantness, then...
Yes, miss. I was afraid you would then. When you didn't, it was most encouraging.
Flo, almost in tears.
I thought you'd be an utter failure, a joke, and they would get rid of you immediately.
Only you forgot my army training.
Flo crosses right to him.
How could the army train you to be a butler?
Whenever he saw the general, my colonel was a perfect butler.
And now, to make it worse, you've taken tips from my friends, and you're my husband.
Sits. McGinnis, hastily to justify himself.
But I assure you I'm not holding out. You're in on it.
What? Oh!
McGinnis produces book.
Here's the record. It's all for you. A new friend of mine who's in the barber business explained it to me. All tips go to the old woman.
Rises.
Give them to me, every cent at once.
Puts hand out. McGinnis, suspiciously.
I might have known. What are you going to do with them?
I shall return every penny.
And explain they were collected by your husband?
Oh,
Of course you can't. Guess I'd better keep this. You might do something foolish, and then we wouldn't have any money to go away on our second honeymoon.
Flo aghast.
Honeymoon?
Yes, quite an idea, don't you think, to have your wife's lovers pay for your honeymoon? I should be able to pick up quite a bit tonight.
Flo stamps foot.
Don't you dare take another cent from those gentlemen.
Oh, I say, have a heart, miss. If they are making love to my wife, I ought to get something out of it.
They're not making love to me.
Turns away from Sam.
Then they're certainly wasting their money.
Pause. Flo, weakening.
Well, what makes you think they're making love to me?
I ought to say, because no man could help it. But the truth is, Tuesday when I came into the room for the third time in 10 minutes, Mr. Arkwright slipped a $20 gold piece. And that's how I knew, Mrs. McGinnis.
Flo turning around to him.
Oh?
Well, that's what I said. Oh, thank you, sir.
Bowing.
I'll get something pretty for my wife. Sort of, give him a show for his money.
That's outrageous.
Now, Mrs. McGinnis.
Flo stamping her foot.
Don't call me Mrs. McGinnis.
Yes, miss, certainly, miss. Only don't get yourself all ruffled up. It's not becoming. No credit to me for standing back and giving all these fellows a show if you don't look good, you know.
She smiles.
There, that's better. Now you look good enough for any husband to give away.
Flo, forcing her sense of humour to her rescue.
I'd like to box your ears.
McGinnis goes to her.
I dare you. You haven't the nerve.
I haven't.
Flo, on sudden impulse, slaps him soundly. McGinnis grabs her arm.
Good. That's the most democratic thing you've done yet. It's the first step.
To divorce.
No, to love and happiness. And here's your reward.
Suddenly seizes her, holds her close to him.
I'm just showing you I could. I'm not kissing you, you see.
Releases her and laughs. He goes right, she left. Flo, who had already closed her eyes and set her mouth ecstatically, expecting to be kissed against her will with rage and disappointment, crosses back and forth. Flo, coming towards him.
I hate you. Da?
Tut, tut, tut.
Right below table, moves toward her.
Careful. The next thing you'll forget you're a lady. And then what would Mr. Rutherford and the General and Mr. Arkwright say? Taking these poor fellows' money and then making you fall in love with your own husband?
That settles it. Now I wouldn't go back to you if you were the last man on earth.
The last man on earth? You wouldn't have a chance.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed. There'd been millions of women. Tall ones and short ones, fat ones and thin ones, ugly ones and pretty ones, blondes and brunettes, washwomen and ladies, too. And there I'd be standing with my arms folded, observing the awful tragedy.
Stands with pose.
Go to it, girls. May the best looker win. Oh, no, my dear. You wouldn't have a chance.
Crosses right towards door. Flo, left lower end of table, suddenly breaks, sits, half sobs. Impulsively he starts towards her, all sorrow, love, and sympathy. She does not see.
That shows what you really think of me. You'd rather have some other woman.
She sinks into chair.
I didn't say that.
Goes to her. He is behind, almost ready to take her in his arms.
You did! Now if you're a gentleman, you'll give me cause for divorce. Any gentleman would.
McGinnis catches himself shrewdly.
Of course, most gentlemen would long ago, but you see, I'm a butler, and butlers are essentially moral.
Oh!
I don't see what you have to complain of. Your husband is liberal enough. Lets you play with the handsome, perfumed Mr. Rutherford.
Perfume! Don't be ridiculous. No gentleman uses perfume. I wouldn't speak to a man who used perfume.
And General McInerny, with his interesting war reminiscences.
Tiresome old stories. If I have to listen to another, I'll scream.
And Billy Arkwright, the caveman.
Mr. Arkwright is a gentleman. Besides, he'd be ridiculous that way.
Yes, I think he would.
You intend to force me to do something desperate.
Desperate? You?
Crosses back to her. Laughs.
Why, you couldn't do anything desperate. You're too afraid of Mrs. Grundy. You were born conventionally. You'll die conventionally. If you are divorced, you'll be divorced conventionally. The only unconventional thing you ever did you're ashamed of, even though it brought you the greatest happiness in life.
Happiness?
McGinnis, bending over her.
Yes, happiness. 1 week of perfect joy. The one thing you can't forget. The one thing you want to remember.
You're right. I can't forget it. I wish I could, because...
Because you love me.
Flo rises.
No, because I love another man.
She expects a jealous outburst. Instead, McGinnis claps his hands with enthusiasm.
Good. Splendid.
Claps hands.
Then you'll help me to be free?
Help you to be free? No. I love you.
Just because I love another man?
No. Because my plan is working. Don't you see you are losing your snobbishness? The veneer is peeling off. I'm making you over again into what you were. The girl I knew in France. Soon you'll have the courage to obey your impulse, to follow your heart.
Flo, in tone of inspiration.
I believe you're right. I feel it. I do believe you're right.
I know I'm right. And when you've gained the courage to follow your heart, then...
Yes, then I'll elope with the other man.
McGinnis struck dumb.
Huh.
Flo crosses towards door left. At door.
Thank you. You've shown me myself. I can never thank you enough.
Exit. Nora enters, right entrance.
Hey,
McGinnis starts.
Lord Algernon.
What is it, Nora?
Too proud to answer the front doorbell?
Bell?
Yes, bell. B-E-double-L.
Have all the guests arrived?
Yes, I have just let Mr. Rutherford in. He's the last one.
She begins placing plates containing caviar on table.
Well, I'll serve the cocktails.
Exit right.
I always knew when we got a butler I'd have twice as much to do. Me own and the butler's.
McGinnis enters with cocktails. Nora, as Sam enters.
Cocktails. Sure only the rich can afford them nowadays.
Oh, I don't know.
Sure you don't. You mix 'em.
Sam exits.
Upstart!
Rutherford enters from conservatory in overcoat and hat, looks around cautiously.
Dodson.
What is it, sir?
I want to see Dodson, Nora.
Nora gets plates from tray on side table and places them on table.
He is in the drawing room serving the cocktails. You'd better hurry and leave your coat and hat upstairs.
Never mind the coat and hat, Nora. I'll leave them out in the conservatory with the daffodils.
You can suit yourself, sir, but you'd better hurry.
Exit. Rutherford starts up as though to exit through conservatory. McGinnis enters left intermediate entrance and starts across to right exit. Rutherford comes down right to McGinnis.
Dodson.
Yes, sir.
Rutherford closes the door left, comes to McGinnis.
Just a second, Dodson. I want to see you privately before I go into the drawing room.
Yes, sir.
Dodson, you've given me some very good tips.
Yes, sir. It's been mutual.
The arrangement can continue.
Thank you, sir.
Pause.
Well?
Pause.
Do you use perfume, sir?
No, of course not.
That's a pity.
Why?
Miss Lanham was talking about that very thing just a few minutes ago.
Rutherford, amazed.
She likes a man to use perfume? Astonishing.
From what she said, sir, it would settle things between you definitely.
I wonder where
There's some very nice strong perfume upstairs in the bathroom adjoining the room where your coat is, sir.
Thanks. That is a tip worth having.
Gives bill to McGinnis.
So is this, sir. Thank you. I'll give this to my wife.
Rutherford, going to door.
Dodson, I'll come back after dinner smelling like a rose.
Exits up one centre. The General enters left, comes to McGinnis down centre.
Something I can do for you, sir?
Pause.
Dodson, I don't like using you as...
Looks around.
All generals use an intelligence department, sir.
Pause.
Yes. Anything to report?
Yes, sir. I heard her speak of you tonight with a great deal of feeling.
Indeed.
Yes, sir. Particularly your stories. She thinks they're wonderful. If you could tell one at dinner. A long one. Heroic.
Dodson, I'll do it.
I'm sure it will get results.
General hands him a bill.
Oh, thank you, sir. I'll give this to my wife.
Dodson, I'll tell her a long one.
Exits. Billy enters from conservatory with cocktail glass in his hand. Comes to McGinnis.
Oh, Dodson.
McGinnis sees glass in Billy's hand.
Did you have your cocktails, sir?
Yes, my own, and 2 that were left by the prohibitionists.
Would you have a glass of water, sir?
Water? Hell no. Whiskey.
McGinnis goes to serving table upright, comes down with bottle and glass, pouring whiskey.
Yes, sir. Was that all right, sir?
No, just half.
Sam pours a second drink. Pause, glass in hand.
This is for courage. Need a lot of courage tonight.
Yes, sir.
McGinnis takes glass and tray back to serving table.
Dodson, I want to see Miss Lanham tonight very particularly. Privately.
Yes, sir.
Whatever I am, see that I am not disturbed.
Yes, sir.
Billy crosses to McGinnis. Pause.
Dodson, you a married man?
Yes, sir.
Pause.
Dodson, how do you make your wife do something when you want her to?
I don't think I understand, sir.
Course, your wife's different class, but, you know, Kipling, great man Kipling, Judy O'Grady, Colonel's lady, all women the same.
Oh, I see, sir. Well, I treat my wife rough.
Treat her rough?
Pause.
Can't treat a lady rough.
Did you ever try it, sir?
No.
Pause.
Colonel's lady, Judy O'Grady, Kipling, great man, he ought to know. You say treat them rough?
Yes, sir.
Billy with wise air as he runs and crosses to door centre.
Watch me.
I will, sir. Carefully.
Oh, treat 'em rough. Treat 'em rough.
I beg pardon, sir. Is that all?
Yes.
Pulls out bill and hands it to McGinnis.
Oh.
I'll give this to my wife.
Billy starts left.
Treat 'em rough. Treat 'em rough.
Crosses left and exits. Walks out with great deal of dignity. Nora enters right intermediate entrance.
The dinner's ready, and the cook says things will spoil.
All right, Nora. I'll hand them in.
Nora exits right intermediate exit. McGinnis opens doors. Through the open door, the furnishings of the drawing-room can be seen. As the door opens, the chatter of voices in animated conversation, a slight pause, then the guests come through the doors into the dining-room. McGinnis follows, closes the door. As they come in, all are talking. Those entering are Mrs. Lanham, Zack Hart, Mrs. Margaret Smythe, General McInerny, Billy Arkwright, Florence Lanham, Mrs. Bessie Henderson, Jack Rutherford, Elizabeth Lanham, and Mr. Lanham. Zack Hart is a man who started from nothing, and at 50 is a big figure in finance. He is above medium height, rather heavy, with a bulldog face, redeemed by keen, shrewd eyes that one minute look through one and the next twinkle with humour. He has the mental snap of the man used to quick decisions, but the quite deliberate movements of a big man assured of his position and his ability. His is the snobbishness of ability, and his success has been largely due to his ability to know and pick winners among men. That is his hobby. McGinnis is left opposite Flo's place at table, picks up Billy's card, says,
Billy Arkwright.
Then picks up Flo's card, saying,
This way, Miss Lanham.
Goes to table, picks up Mrs. Smythe's card, then along to Miss Elizabeth Lanham, puts Mrs. Smythe's card there, picks up Elizabeth's card, and places it next to Billy's. Mrs. Margaret Smythe is close to 30, but looks 5 years younger. She is rather tall, full-blooded, without being fat. That may come later, but now she is at the most attractive period of her life. She is a smart, well-gowned, daring, passionate woman without illusions. She married, frankly, for money the first time, and now, being free, feels the desire and the need of marrying again the right man, and she will do it. Bessie Henderson is just a pretty girl, like a million other pretty girls of the same birth and upbringing. General, as he enters,
And that was the finish of the story.
Mrs. Lanham with conventional laugh.
Most amusing.
The others laugh. Mrs. Lanham, hiding a bored yawn.
Oh, I just adore your stories, General. Don't you, Billy?
Well, when I was in France under the General, I heard a great many.
I'm sure you enjoyed them all.
Billy looks at her, makes a face.
The younger officers always enjoy the General's stories. It's the custom in the army.
Flo, quickly.
You're on Mother's left, Billy?
Next to you.
Of course, silly.
Mrs. Lanham, hastily.
Will you take this place on my right, Mr. Hart?
He bows.
Oh, I'm next to you.
To Hart, delighted.
You've been next to me from the moment I saw you.
Holds out her chair.
I hate frank men. They're always such liars.
Hart, bending low and looking at her card.
Just for that, you shan't sit by me.
Indeed, the hostess generally arranges that.
Yes, read it.
Elizabeth walks around table looking for her place, indicates card. On the other side, Billy holding out chair for Flo.
Excuse me, Miss Lanham. You're on the other side.
But I fixed it myself.
On the other side, Miss Lanham. This card says Miss Elizabeth Lanham.
You're over here by me, Miss Lanham.
Yes. Oh, yes. Isn't that jolly?
Starts around table. Flo, low to McGinnis.
You dare to mix those cards?
Yes, miss.
Here you are. And I was afraid I was going to lose you.
Holds out chair on his right. Mrs. Lanham, as the women straighten themselves out, to McGinnis.
Who mixed the cards? Dodson?
You placed them, madam.
Why, of course. How careless. Next time you place them.
Yes, madam.
You know, you aren't placed at all as I arranged you.
Don't worry. This is splendid, Betty.
And if it isn't as you wanted, why not make it progressive?
Oh, I say.
Yes. Make it progressive.
Make it progressive.
Yes, make it progressive.
Make it progressive.
Precisely. The ladies will move to the left after every course.
Looks at McGinnis as she says it. Others, led by Billy.
Yes.
I have never found my place.
Here.
Holds out chair for her. They are now seated. Mrs. Lanham at the foot of the table nearest the front. Hart on her right. Then, in order, Florence, General McInerny, Mrs. Smythe, Mr. Lanham, Belle Henderson, Rutherford, Elizabeth Lanham, and Billy. When they are finally seated, there comes that deadly pause that always follows the seating of a party. Cough from Hart, and then from Billy.
The 0 hour.
Immediately all began chattering violently.
Have you ever known
Yes,
such weather
indeed.
as we are having this
I
winter?
think they should let the
Pleasant day.
soldiers out sooner.
Oh, well,
Pleasant
you know,
day.
Baker,
Have you ever
I'm a
known such
Bolshevik
weather as we're having
myself.
this winter?
Lovely
Yes,
weather.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Of
Have you
course
ever
they
known
should let
such
the
weather as
soldiers
we are
out
having this
sooner.
winter?
Oh, well,
Yes,
you know,
indeed.
Baker.
I think they should
Pleasant
let the
day.
soldiers out sooner.
Isn't it, though?
Yes, it's been such a pleasant day.
Don't
You know,
say.
Baker, I'm a Bolshevik myself.
Mrs. Smythe, as Sam exits left, to Mrs. Lanham.
You know, you have one thing in your house I would like to steal.
Just one thing, Margaret? What is it?
Your butler.
The butler? Why, Margie!
Well, if I had him, there's only one thing I'd be afraid of. Some one of my guests would elope with him.
Margie, are you serious?
The best-looking thing I've seen. Just think of marching into a ballroom with a thing like that.
I'll tell you a secret. I foresee a series of dinners just to show Dodson off. This is his debut.
Shush, Archibald.
McGinnis and Nora begin removing the oyster plates. Hart, who has been talking low to Flo.
Oh, yes, your father is in on it. You see, we have the rights to a very valuable railroad in South America. Have to build it, of course. just waiting to begin work when we can secure the proper man to put it through. Just think of it. Millions waiting on the end.
Should have thought you'd gotten the man almost first.
We had him first, but German efficiency spoiled him.
How?
Billow wood.
And now...
We have to find another engineer.
McGinnis re-enters, looks at Hart sharply. Hart, without paying particular attention, has been keeping an eye on McGinnis.
Civil engineer? Why, there must be lots of them.
Yes, thousands. But the man we want can't be just a civil engineer. He must be a leader of men, diplomat, and a two-fisted scrapper besides. 1 in 1,000. It is 1,000 to 1 against him.
I thought this was a progressive dinner.
So it is.
Rises.
Gentlemen, please remain seated. Ladies, change.
The ladies arise. McGinnis and Nora are removing the caviar plates and beginning to bring the soup.
I'm just going to the other side, you know.
There you are, General.
Now I'm where I want to be.
Oh, there you are.
You can't lose me.
All ladies move to the left, Flo taking the place at the foot of the table between Billy and Hart. As soon as Flo is seated, Billy reaches over with his right hand, takes her left hand under the table.
Thought you'd never get here.
Silly.
McGinnis, at right of Billy.
Please, sir.
Flo looks up, catches McGinnis's eye, looks at him defiantly, and does not take her hand from Billy. Billy tries to take the bread with his left hand. McGinnis adroitly moves the bread so he can't get it.
Beg pardon, sir. Hadn't you better use your right hand, sir?
Huh?
Sulkily drops Flo's hand, takes piece of bread, puts his hand back to Flo's hand again. McGinnis stops in between, and as Billy reaches for Flo's hand, McGinnis drops a napkin, catches his hand in his, and gives it a crushing squeeze.
Ouch!
Pardon me, that's my hand you squeezed.
Tough luck, Billy.
Hart to Flo, holding out hand.
May I offer mine?
The others laugh.
Congratulations! When are you going to announce it?
Nonsense. Billy was not holding my hand.
Holds her two hands above the table.
Bread, miss?
No.
McGinnis exits.
I wouldn't dare put my hand under the table now.
Billy has reached over and taken Flo's hand again and is whispering to her. Flo is perfectly brazen in her encouragement of Billy.
Telephone, Mr. Arkwright.
Huh? Oh, telephone.
Turns to Mrs. Lanham.
If you'll excuse me.
He rises, exits left. Flo looks at McGinnis, showing that she doesn't believe the telephone message.
You wish something, miss?
Nothing that you can give me.
Mrs. Smythe, who has been talking to Hart.
But why haven't you ever been married?
Hart in voice of tragic actor.
It is a long and tragic story.
Mrs. Smythe beats on the table.
Listen, listen. Everybody hear the Hart tragedy.
Hear,
Hear,
hear.
hear.
Here,
Hear,
here.
hear.
Once I was young, poor, and in love.
Something familiar about that start.
Shh, please.
Please.
She was the prettiest girl in our town, and her father was the biggest banker.
I knew I had heard it before.
Shh, shush.
He intended his daughter for the son of the second largest banker. Then they would consolidate the banks and live happy ever after on other people's money.
George Ade.
Shush, shush.
I wish you wouldn't let your jealousy crop out.
Go on,
Go
Mr.
on,
Hart.
Mr. Hart.
Go on,
Go on,
Go
Mr.
on,
Hart,
Mr. Hart.
please.
I went away to make my fortune, but I came back whenever I could borrow the price. One frightfully hot summer day I came back to see her. My Fiat was a hot day. On my way from the station I stopped at the florist and sent her flowers with my card. When I got to the hotel I learned her father was dead, and I was particularly glad I'd sent her the flowers. They were putting Papa away that afternoon.
I don't see the tragedy.
Now comes the tragedy.
McGinnis with bottle stands lower centre left above him.
My flowers got there okay, so did 100 others. The son of the second largest banker put my flowers on Papa and took the card to her mother. From Jack Hart, he told her. He's a nice boy, she said. I have always liked him. Read the card. And to the assembled grief-stricken family he read the card I had sent with the flowers that now reposed on Papa's chest. I had written, "Just a little something to help you through the heat."
General laughs. McGinnis comes down, pours wine, refills glass.
And the girl?
The next week they consolidated the banks.
All laugh. Billy enters.
Nobody wanted me on the phone.
Sits in his place. Flo to McGinnis.
Did anyone want Mr. Arkwright on the phone?
Yes, miss, a man.
Wine. McGinnis fills Billy's glass, and all through his dinner he is careful to keep it filled. Billy empties it rapidly and gradually shows some effect. Flo turns to Hart.
You know what you said about your railroad interested me lots. Is Dad in it with you?
Yes, that's why I'm down here.
What would you give for the right man to put it through?
McGinnis crosses back to table, filling wine glasses.
Almost any salary in reason?
Suppose I found that man.
Which one of your lovers do you want to get rid of?
Nonsense.
There's some chance for the man not coming back. Fever, natives, the roughnecks he'll have to handle.
Sometimes I'm afraid the man I have in mind can handle anything.
Looks at McGinnis, who hears her lines.
You?
Flo, her head coming up.
No.
Huh. If he couldn't handle a little job like that, I don't want him.
Oh.
Hart to Mr. Lanham.
Miss Lanham and I were just speaking of a man for our project.
I'm afraid the man Flo selected wouldn't have quite the manners for that job.
Oh yes, he has just manners.
Nora enters with soup.
There was a captain in my division. Didn't know him. But he would have been just the man for you. On the DDC. Named McGinnis.
McGinnis starts up the right.
McGinnis? Why, that's the real name of our butler.
All look at McGinnis.
McGinnis? What was your rank in the army?
McGinnis coming down to right of Mr. Lanham.
Buck private, sir. But I know Captain McGinnis by sight. Same regiment.
Flo sinks back, relieved. Others disappointed.
Oh, I am so disappointed. I hope that he was Captain McGinnis. Wouldn't it have been dramatic?
Yes, wouldn't it, Miss Lanham?
Yes, wouldn't it? But things like that only happen on the stage.
She looks him right in the eye, and they both smile challengingly.
Tell us about Captain McGinnis, General.
Certainly, if Miss Lanham would like to hear it.
I'd be delighted.
Speech.
Speech. Stand up.
Speech. Stand up.
General, rising.
It happened in the Argonne. McGinnis came up there in the command of a company of doughboys. He'd been cited for gallantry at Saint Mihiel, but under a cloud.
Flo is sitting very tense in her chair, watching McGinnis, and he, the general. McGinnis stands behind Mrs. Lanham, where she is bound to see him.
Under a cloud.
Yes, an affair of a woman. Anyway, it all happened at some little village where he was in repose between Saint Mihiel and the Argonne. But whatever he did there, he redeemed himself gloriously. We had to make 5 stabs before we got through, you know. The Huns held us 4 times in spite of all we could do. The time of the 5th attack, Mr. McGinnis's company was down to 60 men. He was cut off, 1/4 of a mile ahead of any other troops. 3 times he crawled back himself and carried up supplies and ammunition. One nest of machine guns enfiladed him and played the devil with the men. They couldn't go forward and they couldn't go back. Finally McGinnis crawled over in the night. With 3 men, located the nest. He was the only one that got that far, and he jumped into it alone just at daybreak. Then his men swept on, but it was too late for him. He's over there. They gave him the DSC, but for his escape with the woman, he probably would have had the Congressional Medal of Honor.
That's the man for me. Where is he? I'll give him $10,000 a year to start.
After the start of the story, McGinnis has begun quietly passing the soup, has 2 soups on the tray.
I told you they got there too late for McGinnis.
You know, I could love a man like that.
Then I wouldn't engage him.
And to think that a fellow like that could throw himself away on that kind of a woman.
Flo, startled.
What?
Half rises. McGinnis gives 1 soup to Mrs. Lanham and stands ready to serve Billy. McGinnis is standing behind Billy with the soup. As Flo half rises, he coughs and pours the soup down Billy's back. Flo sits down abruptly as Billy jumps up.
McGinnis! Dodson!
Beg pardon, sir.
Bowing. In the excitement, the curtain falls sharply to end the scene. Curtain. End of Act 2, Part 1. Act 2, Part 2 of Civilian in Clothes by Thompson Buchanan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 2, Scene 2. McGinnis at Rise is placing one of 4 chairs, which are downstage, in front of the table, upstage. McGinnis to Hart, who enters left intermediate entrance.
What can I do for you, sir?
You might shake hands with me.
I don't understand.
Hart walks over, holds out hand.
I want to congratulate you, Captain McGinnis.
Sorry, sir, you are mistaken. My name is McGinnis, but I am not Captain McGinnis.
I don't give a damn what your name is. Will you work for me?
No, sir.
10,000 a year to start.
No, sir.
Good. No butler would turn down $10,000 a year. So you aren't a butler.
Then you don't want me as a butler?
Hell no. Civil engineer.
What makes you think I could handle a transit or calculate grades and costs?
Hart coughs. McGinnis starts right, guiltily.
Good. You are McGinnis, and you are an engineer.
You've not proved that.
No, you proved it, when you blushed like a schoolboy at the old General's story, and then covered Miss Lanham's confusion by pouring the soup down that young fool's back.
Pause. McGinnis laughs.
You'll say nothing.
Naturally, man. It's the prettiest proposition you could imagine. Mine's beyond the dreams of avarice, to be developed, and 500 miles of railroad to be put through the damnedest country you ever saw.
Involuntarily, McGinnis's eyes sparkle. His face lights eagerly.
$15,000 a year to start with. All the money to back you, and authority.
A pause.
Can't you see it?
McGinnis nods.
Of course I can see it.
Pause. Shakes his head.
But...
Do you think any woman is worth sacrificing your future, big work, and $20,000 a year for?
Mrs. Smythe enters left, pauses left of chair, left centre, hand on chair.
Oh, there you are. I've chosen for you.
Good. In just a moment.
To McGinnis, who has crossed to door right.
You haven't answered the last question.
McGinnis at door right, turning, in tone of butler.
The answer is yes, sir. I do think so.
Hart disappointed. Hart pleased. Hart shrugs his shoulders, turns to Mrs. Smythe. McGinnis exits through pantry service door. Hart to Mrs. Smythe.
I need you.
I've always felt that there was some man who needed me.
How well do you make love?
Well, try me. Or perhaps you prefer references, not from relatives.
I can't afford to fail.
You don't expect me to say yes before you ask me.
Oh, Lord, not me. I want you to make love to a butler.
What? But, well, of all the...
Catches herself.
Show me the butler.
Oh, he's a very superior butler. Just refused $20,000 a year to work for me.
20,000 a year? What would I do for $20,000 a year? No lady could tell you.
Come here.
Whispers, business ad libitum. She comes to him. He puts his mouth close to her ear and whispers low, fast. Her face shows front. Her expression changes from curiosity to amazement, keen delight and humour. Finally, she ceases. She throws back her head and laughs heartily.
You'll help me?
Will I? You bet I will. I owe her one anyhow.
You'll have to work fast.
I married my first husband the week after I met him.
Hart moving away from her.
You don't say. I'm leaving for New York Saturday.
2 days?
Looks at him speculatively. He moves further away.
Some woman's going to have a lot of fun gentling you. She'll have her work cut out for her. Not wishing to discourage you.
Discourage? You know you have a strange effect on my ambition.
You're...
Pauses with uplifted eyebrows.
Ambition?
Pause. Mrs. Smythe faces front.
One job at a time.
McGinnis enters bringing some silver, which he places on the sideboard. Hart nods towards him, then starts for door left.
Miss Lanham told me to send you immediately.
I fly.
Exits. Mrs. Smythe sits front of table. To McGinnis.
Would you give me a glass of water, please?
Certainly, madam.
Gets the glass of water from serving table, brings it to her. She drinks the water, looking at him over the glass, holds the glass in her hand, does not replace it on waiter.
Was that all, madam?
Yes, that'll be all.
He takes the glass back to the serving table.
Why don't you let a woman help you?
McGinnis, startled, drops glass on tray.
What? Beg pardon, madam.
I said, why don't you let a woman help you, Captain McGinnis?
McGinnis, with unconscious resentment and hauteur.
You've made a mistake, madam.
Mrs. Smythe rises, bows to him with mock humility.
Oh, please, don't be alarmed, sir. My intentions are perfectly honourable.
He looks at her, she looks at him. Slowly a grin spreads over his face. She smiles too.
There. Is that better?
Pause.
Have I made a successful pickup?
McGinnis bows low.
It does me great honour, madam, to be added to your collection.
She smiles.
Good. I knew I'd like you. You see, it's the first time I ever flirted with a butler. Even a make-believe butler, so forgive me if I do it rather badly.
McGinnis, falling into her mood.
Like a soldier called by the great Russian queen, I await your pleasure.
Mrs. Smythe sits front of table looking at him with critical admiration.
You know, I think I could love you.
Do you think it's a fair game for a lady to try to make a fool of a butler?
I think it's a fair game for a lady to make a fool of anybody, if she can.
If she can.
Can she?
That depends. How far do you usually go?
Oh, if one knew, what would be the fun in the adventure?
Pause.
How far do you usually go?
Until I get what I start after.
Mrs. Smythe rises, crosses to McGinnis, smiles with invitation.
I'll be at home tomorrow evening.
Shall I call in my...
Indicates butler's livery.
No. You may wear those very good-looking evening clothes you have hidden away to dazzle Miss Lanham with.
He starts involuntarily. She smiles. The door starts to open. With a quick look, McGinnis sees Flo entering. He bends toward Mrs. Smythe, almost lover-like.
What a pity we didn't meet sooner.
Flo starts, gasps.
A late start makes for speed, don't you think?
Flo, astounded.
Well, Margie!
McGinnis, with exaggerated guilty look, straightens up.
Oh, that you, dear. I was just having a most charming chat with your butler.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed. You know, since the evening I met my first husband, I don't know when I've been so thrilled. My dear, he's adorable.
McGinnis straightens up.
I can hardly wait to see him in evening clothes.
Evening clothes?
Of course, my dear. Evening clothes. That's the test of a man.
St. Patrick.
Exits to right. Flo, icily.
I'd advise you to try him in a dress suit first.
Oh, I'm going to. Tomorrow night. He's coming to call.
Coming to call? My?
Starts to say husband, catches herself.
Butler, on you.
Certainly. On whom else? Rush dinner a little, will you? That's a dear child, so the poor fellow can get away early.
McGinnis re-enters and crosses to left, opening door for Mrs. Smythe.
I'm sorry, but it's Dodson's night in.
Oh, I'll wait for him. Don't forget me, butler man.
I'll be there, madam.
Closes door after her. Flo crosses left to him in hurry.
What did that woman say to you?
I'm sorry, miss, but that is a private matter.
She's trying to make a fool of you.
He gets her attitude instantly and plays his cards.
Oh, no, miss, I hardly think so. She seemed a very kind, sweet-spoken lady.
Kind, sweet-spoken?
Yes, and so beautiful.
She kidnapped her first husband the week she met him.
Honestly?
Looking off left, a smile of delightful anticipation spreads over his face. Flo, cuttingly.
From your expression, I suppose you imagine she'll elope with you.
A few minutes ago you were going to elope with someone. Well, if that's the custom of the smart set.
Oh.
It's strange more women don't realize how interesting the purely natural woman without veneer or snobbery can be.
Natural. Not even her complexion is that.
What is complexion besides a soul?
Flo crosses to him.
I think you've gone mad.
I wonder.
Now see here, Sam McGinnis.
Beg pardon, miss. Are you addressing me in my professional or personal capacity?
Flo, with anger.
Personally.
Then speaking personally and professionally. Sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, and I don't propose that you shall have all the love-making in this family.
Turns back on her.
As a married man, I'm entitled to my share, and I'm going to get it at home or elsewhere. It's up to you.
Flo, enraged and dumbfounded.
Well,
Of course, as you have 3, I suppose I'll have to do 3 times as much.
Enlightens.
Well, I think we can.
Flo, with amazement, rage, fear, and unwilling admiration.
We'll see.
Billy enters left. It is plainly evident he has been drinking. He is speaking to himself as he enters. Billy motions McGinnis off. Billy to himself.
Treat 'em rough.
Makes extravagant gesture to McGinnis to get out. McGinnis realizes the situation, smiles and exits to butler's pantry. Flo turns to Billy, surprised. Billy with exaggerated savagery.
Sit down.
Flo, amazed, sits suddenly. Billy turns towards audience with grin on his face.
Treat 'em rough.
Flo, having recovered from her amazement, jumps to her feet, angry that she, without thinking, obeyed him.
Billy Arkwright, what under the sun?
Billy, looking around stage with exaggerated dignity.
Son? Whose son?
Flo looks fixedly at Billy, realizes he is intoxicated.
How many times have I told you not to mix cocktails and scotch?
I didn't mix 'em. I just put them there and they mixed themselves.
Shaking his finger sternly.
Flo, I am not going to stand the...
Sit down.
Billy flops into chair surprised. Flo starts going toward pantry.
I know what you need. Dotson!
McGinnis enters.
Dotson, take Mr. Arkwright out and give him a bromo seltzer.
McGinnis bows.
Yes, miss.
Goes back to the table and takes Billy by arm.
If you please, sir.
Billy rises with drunken dignity.
All right, if that's the way you feel about it.
Moves toward pantry with McGinnis as he goes out, holding on to McGinnis's arm.
Dodson, your advice is no good at all.
Flo looks at him sharply.
You and Kipling all wrong. Can't treat a lady rough, won't allow you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Exits with Billy. Rutherford enters door left. Business with handkerchief.
Hello. Been looking for you.
Flo, backing away from him.
What have you been doing to yourself?
Nothing. Why? Come into the conservatory. I want to talk to you.
Conservatory? No, thanks. You're sweet enough without the flowers.
But, Flo...
Flo moves away.
Keep away from me. Is it hair tonic, or is it some of that awful French perfume?
Why, I put it on for you. Don't you like it?
I hate it. I hate everything like that, and you know it.
Rutherford, turning to left and clenching his fists.
Confound that butler.
Flo, following him a step.
What has the butler to do with it?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Jack Rutherford, how much did you tip Dotson for making a fool of you?
Rutherford, in a rage,
I know what I'm gonna tip him.
The General enters left.
Ah, Miss Lanham.
Handkerchief business by Rutherford. He rubs the handkerchief across the General's shoulders. Flo turns to door of pantry.
Yes, General, just a second.
Calls off right.
Dodson, call Mr. Arkwright.
Yes, miss.
Calls off.
Mr. Arkwright?
You want me, Dodson? You just took me off.
Looks around.
What's the trouble?
I need you. Don't go, Dodson.
Motions him over to her side.
Dodson, return these gentlemen the money they gave you tonight.
Money?
Money? What money?
Money?
The money you gentlemen paid Dodson for making fools of you.
Now listen, Flo.
Billy drops the glass and gulps.
Miss Lanham.
Return the money, Dodson.
McGinnis crosses to the three men.
Yes, miss.
The three men stand like whipped schoolboys, pictures of embarrassed men. McGinnis produces his notebook and bills. Reads.
Mr. Rutherford, for information that Miss Lanham likes a man to use a strong perfume. $5.
Billy and General burst into a laugh. Rutherford holds back. Flo motions. He takes the money unwillingly. Rutherford, as the others laugh.
Wait!
In protest to Flo, with the money still in his hand.
He hung it on me fairly. He's entitled to the money.
Take that money for more perfume.
I don't use it anymore.
Takes money.
Really, Miss Lanham, I object.
General McInerny, for information that Miss Lanham loves stories of General McInerny's heroism. $2.
General snatches money and sticks it in his pocket. Rutherford, turning to Billy with a laugh and holding up 2 fingers.
Piker, $2.
Mr. Arkwright, $20.
Say, he must have given you an earful.
Now, gentlemen, thanking you one and all for your kindness.
Really, I think, Miss Lanham.
Flo shaking hands.
Good night, General. I've enjoyed your stories so much.
Rutherford crosses to Flo, centre.
Good night, Flo. Have lunch with me tomorrow. Got $5.
You incorrigible.
Shakes hands. Rutherford turns.
Good night, William. Sweet William.
Rubs handkerchief across Billy and exits. Flo turns to Billy, who stands the picture of glum anger.
Anything else, miss?
I'll speak to you later.
Yes, miss.
Starts to turn away, turns back.
Beg pardon, miss, but will there be any guests for dinner tomorrow night?
Flo, involuntary anger at his cool laughing at her.
Oh!
Billy, feeling that there is something between them, not knowing what it is.
Flo, I'm not going to permit a damned impertinent butler to...
Like a flash, McGinnis turns on him. The air of a butler drops from McGinnis. He stands instead drawn up to his full height, the fighting captain of doughboys facing an inferior officer, snaps out sharply in the tone of the drilling ground.
Lieutenant Arkwright, attention!
Involuntarily, his army training asserts itself. Billy snaps to attention and stands rigid before his superior officer. The two face each other, not as civilians, but as captain and lieutenant.
Who are you to speak with me in that way?
I was a captain of infantry at San Miguel.
You a captain?
McGinnis reaches in pocket, brings out Distinguished Service Cross, shows it. In tone of amazement and unwilling admiration, Billy looks at the cross in his hand.
The Distinguished Service Cross.
Looks from McGinnis to Flo and back to McGinnis.
So you were that captain, sir?
Yes. And now it's cards on the table between you and me. The rest is up to Miss Lanham.
I understand.
Wait for me, Billy. I wish to speak to Captain McGinnis.
Billy bows to her, bows to McGinnis. McGinnis bows to him. Billy turns and exits, still dazed. Flo to McGinnis.
How dared you do that?
The time has come for a showdown.
Comes over to Flo. Flo unheeding him.
Do you think you can make a joke of my friends, laugh at me, humiliate me, break your word to me?
You are sure you haven't broken your word to me?
What word?
Your word given in France to be a loyal, true wife.
Me? Loyal? True? How about yourself? Not 20 minutes ago I find you in this very room carrying on with another woman, making appointments with her, planning to go see her at night. You think you can do all that and then expect me to love you?
You are going on like a spoiled, jealous child.
Flo crosses to left towards door. The truth of it cuts and lashes her into a rage.
Jealous? Do you think I'd be jealous of her, a woman like that? A woman who flirts with a servant that takes tips from gentlemen?
Laughs high and excitedly.
Huh! Jealous of her! I'll show you how jealous I am.
You think I don't love you when only tonight I...
About to tell her of Hart's offer, he stops short.
Say it. Say it.
He keeps silent, which only adds to her anger.
You won't. All right, I'll say it for you. Only tonight, you humiliated me, insulted me. Oh, I told you what I felt when you first came back. I knew this wouldn't work out. Oh, I was a fool. A fool.
She is on the verge of angry tears.
You're acting very much like a fool now.
I'm not. I have been, but I've waked up. I see clearly. I know what I'm going to do.
Sometimes I almost wonder if you're worth it.
Huh. Wonder? I don't wonder. I know. I knew the moment I saw you I'd made an awful mistake. You harp on promises. All right, I remember promises you made me. The promise you made when you agreed to this thing. Now I hold you to it. Now make good.
What promise?
The promise to go away, say nothing, let me get a divorce quietly.
And then make the greater mistake of marrying that boy? No!
You go, or I go.
You'd tire of him in a week.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to admit we both have been fools. Announce our marriage and bring you to your senses.
Flo stares at him, horrified.
Oh, I hate you.
McGinnis suddenly takes her by the shoulders, gives her a little shake.
I'm going to make you love me, understand? Love me! Love me!
Losing control of himself, he pulls her to him, kisses her several times. Flo, fighting herself free.
Don't! You'll give me grounds for divorce or I'll give you grounds for divorce.
Oh, no, you won't.
I will.
Exits left upstage as she rubs her hand violently across her mouth and rushes from the room just as her mother and Mr. Lanham, followed by Hart, enter excitedly.
Dodson, is this true?
What, madam?
Mr. Arkwright tells us that you are Captain McGinnis.
Yes, madam.
A captain in the army. For our butler. Oh, my.
Looks at him, almost overcome with amazement and pride.
I don't know what to say.
I don't see that there is any necessity of anything, madam, so long as I'm giving satisfaction.
You mean you're going to stay?
Do you know of any reason why I shouldn't?
No.
Nonsense. If she doesn't know any reason, I do.
What?
The simple reason I don't want you any longer.
Discharge Dodson? McGinnis? Dodson? You shall do no such thing.
But...
Don't think for one instant, Archibald, that I shall permit you to interfere with my domain. Captain McGinnis is a brave soldier. He's a hero.
I appreciate, Betty, the social advantage of having a hero as a butler, but all the same, Dodson is discharged for the reason that Captain McGinnis is going to work for Mr. Hart and myself.
$20,000 a year?
Mrs. Lanham sits down abruptly.
Good gracious.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lanham, but I've already discussed that matter with Mr. Hart, and for the present I prefer my present position.
There. I knew he was loyal. I knew he'd do the wise thing.
Nora enters abruptly from the service door.
Excuse me, Mrs. Lanham. I must see you a moment.
All look up, startled.
What is it, Nora?
It's Miss Florence, ma'am. She's gone.
Gone? Gone where?
I don't know, sir. She's gone with Mr. Billy. Her and him eloped.
Oh, Arch, go after them. Go after them.
Now, my dear, don't get excited.
Forgive me, Mrs. Lanham, my interrupting you at this happy time, but I am quitting at once.
But I thought...
Mr. Lanham looks at him shrewdly.
Don't forget that offer's open.
Puts hand on McGinnis's shoulder.
Thanks. I'll take it. You go ahead and make arrangements.
Good.
Hart exits left.
But first I have some family matters to attend to.
Family matters?
Yes. I'm going to see my wife.
Going to door right.
I didn't know you were married.
Captain, who is your wife?
Believe me, she's a damned little fool.
Curtain falls rapidly. Mrs. Lanham and Elizabeth talking excitedly about the elopement. Curtain. End of Act 2, Part 2. Act 3 of Civilian Clothes by Thompson Buchanan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 3. Scene: Hotel Parlour in Hotel Grunwald. Windows left. 2 entrances rear on corridor. 1 entrance right to hotel lobby. Evening of the 2nd day. Discovered: Hart in evening clothes, smoking moodily, seated right of table, reading paper. Coloured boy enters right.
Yes, sir. Here I am, sir.
Did you find out about that train?
Yes, sir. The IC from Louisville is 20 hours late on count all headwater. You come down on the L and N. That's how you happen to beat them it. The trains the author got in last night just coming in now, sir. I reckon they're 2 trains. Last night and tonight, coming in pretty near together.
Huh.
Pause.
And did you find out about Mr. and Mrs. Arkwright?
No, sir. There ain't no 6 gentlemen stopping in the hotel. Then I rang up their son's house, and they aren't there neither. But the clerk here says Mr. Arkwright telegraphed from Memphis for rooms for himself and wife, and we are holding them.
Hart reaches in his pocket, pulls out $1 and hands it to the boy.
All right, George Washington. Let me know the moment they arrive.
Excuse me, boss. I am George Washington. That's the other boy. I said Lafayette.
Hart rises.
Excuse me, General Foch.
Yes, sir.
Exits just as McGinnis enters centre.
No trace of them yet.
Haven't heard, have you?
McGinnis shakes his head and crosses up right centre, looks off to right.
Don't you think, my boy, you're wasting your time?
What do you mean?
A man's a fool to allow any woman to upset him when he has big work to do. Forget her.
Don't you think you're wasting your time?
What do you mean?
A man is a fool that tries to regulate another man's life when he knows he can't do it.
Goes through arch to right.
I agree with you. I don't care whether it's any of my business or not. I don't propose to see you spoiling your life over a woman that's not worth it.
But you see, I'm not spoiling my life. because she is worth it to me.
Now see here, Sam, I'm an older man than you, and if you take my advice...
All the mistakes in the world come from taking the other fellow's advice.
Hart, throwing up his hands, rises, crosses up to centre.
All right, that settles it. I'm through. But it may interest you to know, since you're so sure of her, that there are rooms reserved in this hotel for Mr. and Mrs. Arkwright.
Yes, wired from Memphis. I knew it hours ago.
We can't hold up millions of dollars to wait the convenience of your love affairs, you know.
You can always get another boy, you know.
Hart crosses quickly down left to front of table, facing McGinnis.
Oh, come. You know I didn't mean that, you know.
Then trust me. I'm playing for my life's happiness, man. I can't afford to fail. I won't be worth a continental damn to you, myself or anybody else, if I don't see this through.
McGinnis Sr. enters right centre, preceded by bellboy with grip.
Sam, my boy.
Dad.
They clasp hands, Sam throwing his left arm around his father's shoulders and giving him a hug, then turning to Hart.
My father, Mr. Hart.
Sam and McGinnis Sr. move down right of table. Hart grasping the old man's hand.
How are you, Mr. McGinnis?
McGinnis Jr. motions Bell Hop off.
It's good to see you, Dad. Didn't have an idea you were within 1,000 miles of New Orleans.
Puts him in chair.
Well, you see, I've been worrying over you close to a month.
To Hart.
His letters ain't been happy, so I just thought I'd sort of run down to Louisville and look at the reason.
And when you got there...
I went to the address you wrote. The maid told me that you had been working as a butler.
Turns to Hart.
My boy, working as a servant.
To McGinnis Jr.
Then I knew things were bad.
How did you know he had come to New Orleans?
The maid told me at the Lanham house that he was going to work for you, and they gave me your address here in New Orleans. So I took the first train, and here I am.
To Sam.
You see, I wanted to hear about that young woman from you.
Young woman?
Don't try to fool your dad. You've been out of the army for nearly 2 months. What else could have kept you from your old dad? What else could have spruced you up so? Why, boy, you're a regular dude.
Looks expectantly at Sam. A long pause. Sam is trying to make up his mind whether or not to tell his father. Hart watches him anxiously, obviously eager for Sam to tell.
You're right, Mr. McGinnis. He ought to tell you all about it. I've tried to advise him, but he won't listen to me. From the way he acts, I know there's something he's holding out.
Turns to Sam.
I'll go out, Sam. You can talk to your father more freely. You aren't in shape, boy, to think clearly about this matter. Take his advice. If you want to find me, I'm gonna get some 275.
Exits left centre. McGinnis Sr. looks expectantly at Sam. A long pause. Sam leans over table.
Come, son, tell your old man all about it. If there's any trouble, you could talk to me straight from the shoulder.
Pauses. Sam doesn't speak.
One way and another, I've gathered this much. You're in love with Miss Lanham, and she's eloped.
There's nothing I can tell you, Dad. Nothing I can talk about until I've seen her and him.
McGinnis Sr. quickly puts his hand on his son's arm.
She's shown what she thinks of you, boy. She's gone with another man. Why not take your medicine like a man? Let her go.
I can't, Dad.
But if she's married to another man...
But she's not. She can't be. Because she's my wife.
You are married?
Strokes hair.
Yes. We were married in France. I wish I had told you, Dad, but at the time...
That's all right, son.
Pause.
So, she's your wife, and she's gone with another man.
Rises, with explosion of anger and contempt, striking table with open hand.
Well, then to hell with her.
Pause.
Yes, Dad, but what of me? And the other man?
What are you planning to do, son?
McGinnis Jr. comes down and crosses right in front of table to McGinnis Sr.
I'm going to take her away from him. And if he so much as bats an eye, I'll...
No, boy. He couldn't have taken her if she didn't want to go.
She's done nothing wrong. She's foolish, headstrong. But she's done nothing really wrong. I'd stake my life on it.
But if she has?
She's my wife, Dad, and I love her.
Hart enters.
Then it's time to quit talking like a foolish boy and begin to use your brains to get her back. Now, when I was courting your mother...
Yes, Dad, I remember. What were you saying, Dad?
I've got lots of ideas about women. Old men always have.
Turns to Hart.
Haven't they, sir?
How should I know?
McGinnis Sr. starts to exit.
Oh, you too.
To McGinnis Jr.
Come, son. Come along to my room and we'll talk this all over.
McGinnis Sr. exits left.
Where does he get that old man stuff?
Hart sits down on chair left centre, reads. Mrs. Smythe, in evening gown, enters at right and slowly crosses toward Hart. He looks up at her. Hart rises left centre, staring at Mrs. Smythe.
Well, I'll be damned. You!
Mrs. Smythe, smiling.
Whom were you expecting?
How did you get here?
The trains run quite regularly.
You didn't tell me you were coming to New Orleans.
Throws paper on the table, paces to and fro. She watches him smiling the age-old smile of woman. Mrs. Smythe crosses and stops to write.
Didn't I? Possibly I was afraid if I told you, you might sail for South America from some other port.
Hart stops, faces her irritably.
I never saw a woman like you.
Of course you haven't. If you had, I would have been different.
Smiles on him, pauses.
You see, my friend, you don't realize my possibilities.
I'm beginning to.
Pauses, walks, stops again.
See here, I don't want to be married.
Nobody asked you, sir, she said.
I haven't. What are you doing here?
Mrs. Smythe crossing to write business with fan.
Merely showing a prospective purchaser an attractive line of goods.
I'm not in the market.
Mrs. Smythe laughs, shakes her head.
You're too old and too hard to appreciate a gift.
I'm not so damned old.
Mrs. Smythe, calmly, right of centre, half-seated on table.
You're not so damned young.
How about you?
I'm 28, and my next 15 years are the years of a woman's life. You'll be getting the best of me, you see.
I'm just 52.
And you've lived too hard to last much beyond 67.
I wish you wouldn't talk like that.
Gives you the shivers? Why is it the bigger the man, the more he fears the finish?
Hart returning to her and striking table with hand.
That's the worst of success. You build, and you build, and...
Then you stop short. You've no one to leave it to.
Hart, hands in pocket meditatively.
It'll take 15 years to properly develop these new art syndicates properties.
A boy of 14 will be worth having then.
Yes.
Realizing what she means, looks quickly at her, then, scandalized, crossing left and back to left centre.
You're the frankest woman I've ever met.
I'm just as all women are going to be.
Crosses back to right of him, pauses as he thinks this over. She looks at him shrewdly.
You know, that night at the Lanhams, I was acutely conscious that I had met two men, either of whom would make marriage worthwhile.
Two?
Yes, you and Sam McGinnis.
You'd marry McGinnis?
Any woman would marry McGinnis.
One wouldn't.
Nonsense. That was because she's young. I made her jealous. Then McGinnis rode her with spurs, and like any thoroughbred filly, she bolted. And I'm honestly sorry, because I know she must be eating her heart out now.
Hart clasps fist into other palm.
Good. That speech is what I've been waiting for. So you have a heart after all.
Of course. Every woman has. Only men doubt that.
You get that girl back for McGinnis, and it's a trade.
Pardon my frankness, but that's the damnedest proposal I ever had.
Fans herself as she turns to right.
It's the only one you'll get from me.
Mrs. Smythe turns to him.
But suppose she's married to Arkwright.
If McGinnis is satisfied, we should worry.
Accepted?
Hart looks at her curiously. They're close together.
I wonder if we'll get on.
Mrs. Smythe, she looks at him.
Why not? You've known many women, and I've been married, on and off.
Hart embraces and kisses her, looks at her, then turns away, crosses to left centre. She looks at him with tantalizing invitation. He looks at her, suddenly takes her in his arms, and crushes her to him and kisses her, at last releases her. She looks at him breathlessly. McGinnis enters and exits left upper entrance.
Did you say you were 52?
Shakes her head.
25.
McGinnis enters right centre. He is in evening clothes of faultless cut, looks particularly distinguished. Hart crosses to McGinnis.
Well, Sam, she's landed me.
McGinnis, right of Hart, a little above him, shakes hands with him.
Congratulations.
To Mrs. Smythe.
You know, he told me you were the only woman he'd ever seen worth marrying, and he thought if he could keep you guessing long enough, he might land you.
Mrs. Smythe to Hart.
Oh, you did? So that's the way you handle things.
Hart crosses to Mrs. Smythe, left centre.
When you want a thing, never let the other fella know you're anxious to get it.
McGinnis gives a perceptible start.
You know, it's funny, that's what Dad said.
Suddenly turns to Mrs. Smythe.
Will you help me, Margie?
I offered to 3 days ago. What do you want me to do?
I don't know. Just stand by and follow my lead.
What are you going to do?
Damned if I know.
Hey?
I mean, I'm going to wait till I see her, and then... Then I'm going to leave it up to her, and I'm going to do exactly what she doesn't expect.
Business methods, my boy, business methods. Men use them in business to get rich, and women use them in love to get men, and the men never realize their own methods have been their undoing.
Bellboy enters right.
Their train from Louisville has arrived, and Mr. and Mrs. Arkwright have just come.
exits.
Just stick around and follow my lead.
Hart starting to leave.
I'll be in.
I know. The bar.
Hart exits with Mrs. Smythe right. McGinnis peeps out from portieres at arch left centre as Flo and Billy enter. He quickly exits. Flo and Billy enter right upper and cross down. Flo sinks in chair down right. They are followed by boy.
You can put these down. I'll wait here.
Yes, madam.
Will you tell the gentleman?
Yes, madam. I will tell your husband. He's registering now.
That will be all. You can check those grips.
Boy exits and grips. Billy enters hurriedly.
Whew. 20 hours late in a 24-hour trip. Still, that's not bad under government ownership. How are you, dearest?
Bends to kiss her. McGinnis enters right upper and starts to take handkerchief from his hip pocket. Flo sees him, jumps to her feet and screams.
Sam, don't! Don't! He didn't know!
McGinnis looks at them, astonished.
I've just been waiting for an opportunity to congratulate you.
Takes a hand of each.
I was just reading about your marriage.
About our marriage?
Yes, special from Louisville.
Flo to Billy.
You telegraphed to Louisville? You didn't tell me you telegraphed.
No, I didn't.
What's wrong?
Nothing.
Aren't you married?
Flo looks at Billy. Billy looks at Flo.
Why?
Yes, of course, we...
How do you like it?
Gulps from both of them.
How do you like it?
Why ask me? I'm not married to him.
Flo trying to change the subject.
But what are you doing here?
Well, you see, when you ran away with Billy, I got lonesome. So I...
You don't mean you...
McGinnis nods.
Who? Who is she?
Can't you guess?
Not...
Yes.
Oh.
Flo crosses right to sofa, sits. Mrs. Smythe and Hart enter door left. McGinnis goes up, takes her by the arm and brings her down. Hart looks after them, astonished.
Dearest, I was just telling them about us.
Mrs. Smythe starts perceptibly. McGinnis gives her a little sharp nudge to follow his lead. Hart stares annoyed and indignant. Mrs. Smythe, getting it.
Oh, yes, you tell her all about us, Sam.
Hart gulps. Mrs. Smythe beams up into McGinnis's face as he leads her down right centre. Flo crosses over front of table to left-right of Billy. McGinnis brings Mrs. Smythe down right of table, and with his arm around her, stands right of her in lover-like attitude. Hart is hovering near entrance left, slightly uneasy.
Congratulations, Mrs. Arkwright.
Thank you, Mrs.
Congratulations, Mrs. McGinnis.
Flo to McGinnis.
You didn't waste much time, did you?
We're merely following the example of the smart set.
Mrs. Smythe, now wise.
Oh, there's nothing slow about Sam.
Hangs on Sam's arm, looking into his eyes, suddenly.
I have an idea. We eloped the same time. We have met here. We'll take our honeymoon together.
Yes, that will be jolly, won't it, Captain McGinnis?
Suits me.
But we had our plans already made.
Oh, we don't care where we are, do we, Margie dear? As long as we are together.
McGinnis kisses Mrs. Smythe. Billy stands to kiss Flo.
You've got nothing on us.
Please, you know I hate vulgar display of affection.
I think all women show what they feel, don't you?
Yes, and Billy and I are very happy, aren't we, Billy?
Of course we are.
It's wonderful to see 4 people so happy.
Kisses Mrs. Smythe. Hart comes down, trying to force a laugh.
Yes, but where do I come in?
You don't. You go out.
Well, I'll go out and get a Coca-Cola.
Exits left.
Oh, where were you married?
Flo stands, crosses upright.
Didn't the papers say?
McGinnis nudges her.
Why, sure, the papers. Where are the papers, Margie?
In the room, I think. I'll go get them.
To Billy.
Come with me.
To Flo.
If you can spare him.
Exit Billy and Mrs. Smythe. Flo, left centre.
You're a good forgetter, aren't you?
We both are.
6 days ago, mad about one girl to whom you owed a duty.
I thought you decided to leave duty in France.
Just 6 days ago.
Well, but then I hadn't met Margie.
Flo, bitter imitation, sits.
No, you hadn't met Margie.
McGinnis crosses to left end of table, looking after Mrs. Smythe.
Oh, I must tell you about Margie. You know, she's the most wonderful woman in the world. So beautiful, such taste, such knowledge, and in her utmost surrender, such sweet shyness.
Yes, she's famous for her sweet shyness.
I can never thank you enough for having made it possible for me to meet her. I shall always remember you for that.
Just for that. Thank you.
Yes. I think but for that I'd be probably now a raving lunatic running around with a gun trying to kill Billy or you or myself. While instead I want to shake him by the hand. And for you I have the kindliest feeling.
Thank you. That's very nice. You know, if there's anything a woman does appreciate, it's for a man to have the kindest feeling for her.
She is almost ready to cry for humiliation and rage. McGinnis sits right of table.
What do you suppose was the first thing Margie did when we found we loved each other?
Flo, seated left of table.
I really don't know what she usually does.
She asked me all about my people.
And I suppose you told her all about your father in Racine.
Yes, my father, the cobbler. And she insisted that I wire him at once to come and be with us in our happiness.
He's coming?
This evening, expecting him any moment.
At this hotel?
An idea obviously strikes Flo. She starts to speak, suppresses the inclination.
Dear old Dad. He'll be so proud of her.
Margie's voice heard off.
Sam, dear.
There, you hear? His master's voice.
Calls.
Coming, dearest. Coming.
Seizes Flo by hand, gives it energetic shake.
Goodbye. Good luck.
Is hurrying to door to hall when meets Billy coming in, seizes Billy's hand, wrings it fervently, wheeling him around.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Goodbye.
Calls.
Coming, Margie, dear.
Exits rapidly. Flo stares after him, dumb and heartsick, sits in chair left. Billy, bland, self-satisfied.
I never saw such a woman. Thought I'd never get away. How are you now, dearest?
Comes over, starts to take her hand. She jerks it away from him.
Don't touch me. Don't speak to me.
Drops on sofa, buries face in hands, sobs.
Oh, I'm miserable. Utterly miserable.
McGinnis Sr. appears at the door left upper entrance and realises he is intruding on private party, tries to back out, and being awkward in social usages, does not know how to do it gracefully.
Excuse me. I didn't mean to butt in. I was just looking for Captain Sam McGinnis.
He's not here.
I see he ain't. Excuse me.
Strokes hair. Flo stands for instant petrified, staring at McGinnis, then obviously an inspiration strikes her.
You are Captain McGinnis's father.
Crosses right to McGinnis Sr. McGinnis Sr., delighted, moving toward her in a step.
Yes, miss. Yes, some folks do say we look alike.
Strokes hair.
I'm glad to meet you.
Shakes hands with him eagerly.
We are friends with Captain McGinnis. Come right in.
Billy stands aghast and enraged.
Well, that's right friendly of you.
This is Mr. Arkwright.
McGinnis Sr. to Billy.
Pleased to meet you.
I think, Florence, if Mr. McGinnis will excuse us.
He is obviously planning to get rid of McGinnis. Flo giving the other twist to it.
I want to talk to Mr. McGinnis alone.
Certainly.
Sure.
Billy exit.
Good night.
McGinnis Sr. crosses over to right to Flo.
I didn't quite get your name, miss.
Flo following him.
My name.
With sudden smile of one plunging into deep water.
I'm Mrs. McGinnis, Sam.
McGinnis Sr. stares at her a moment, blinks in surprise.
You are Sam's wife?
Flo, glad she has gotten over it and a bit breathless after the plunge.
Yes.
McGinnis Sr. hurt.
Sam should have told me he was married.
We've not told anybody yet. You are the first to know it.
McGinnis Sr. instantly beams, sits in chair right.
Honest?
Honest.
They look at each other, smiling. Suddenly, on impulse, she bends forward and kisses him. He is obviously greatly embarrassed.
Shucks, you're kinder...
Moves his shoulders in embarrassed fashion, beams.
I'm awfully glad Sam's married,
Florence.
Florence, that's a pretty name. My wife's name was Catherine.
Catherine is a beautiful name.
Pauses, determined to show she is a loyal daughter.
Don't you want to chew?
Chew what?
Tobacco.
Pause.
I don't chew, but if you want to, go right ahead.
Why, Sam told me...
Don't you know that boy well enough to know he's a born joker? Half the time he's making fun of folks. He can't help it.
Sam has a wonderful sense of humor, hasn't he?
That's the way I like to hear a wife talk. Nothing newfangled, just plain man and woman. Them as God has joined together.
Yes.
I have been worried about Sam for some time. His letters ain't been so happy. Guess that was while you was a-courtin', and maybe you was treating him mean?
Yes.
That's good for him. Makes him appreciate you.
Pause.
You know, you aren't what I expected. Oh, why, you are just an old dear.
McGinnis Sr., he takes her hand and pats it.
I'm mighty glad Sam's married a girl that's not ashamed of his plain old father.
Ashamed of you? Whatever could make you think Sam's wife would be ashamed of you?
I've been mighty worried about the girl Sam would marry. You know, Sam is what you call a snob.
Sam a snob?
Yes, all folks that get ahead in this world are snobs. That's what puts them ahead. They're snobs about position, snobs about money, snobs about society, snobs about what they can do, ability, and religion. Why, religion's just full of them. Some of the darndest snobs I ever knew was church snobs. Absolutely certain they're the only people in the world got a speaking acquaintance with God.
But at least you aren't a snob.
But I am. I'm the darndest snob ever about making shoes.
And Sam?
Sam's a snob about his ability. And that's the best kind of a snob, because those ability snobs have to live up to what they think they are, And the better they get, the better they think they are, so they just keep on going and going till the rest of us ain't got a chance. Rockefeller, Schwab, Wilson, they're ability snobs. And then Sam's a terrible snob about coming from the common people. You know that boy wouldn't take $1 million for being able to say, "My father's a shoemaker."
Grins.
When he's going strong, he calls it cobbler. Of course, I was a cobbler, but it's a factory now. I'm thinking Sam never mentioned that?
Flo, a light breaking.
No, he never did.
McGinnis Sr. smiles with appreciation of Sam's weakness.
Maybe, Todd, you're wondering and thinking I oughtn't be saying all this, but I have my reasons.
Taking her hand.
My boy Sam is the world to me. He's all I have, all I live for, all I have lived for since his mother left him to me. And I couldn't tell him what I've just told you for anything. But you are his wife. You love him. And remember that if a man and a woman are to be happy together, they don't have to worry about each other's strength, but they must understand and handle each other's weaknesses. That's why I've tipped you off to Sam's.
Thanks. I understand.
Pauses.
Now what am I a snob about?
Just now you seem to be a snob about making your daddy-in-law love you, and you're doing it.
Pauses. He winks.
The rest I'll tell to Sam.
Whatever you tell him, will you tell him tonight? Tell him that...
Mrs. Smythe appears, cutting off Flo before she can finish.
Just looking for Captain McGinnis. Have you seen him, dear?
No.
Rises, crosses to right.
When you do see Captain McGinnis, ma'am, would you tell him to come here? He's expecting me.
I have a suspicion that he is in the bar.
Thank you, ma'am. If he's already there, it'll save us both a walk.
Pauses at the door, exits right. Mrs. Smythe has entered, bright and smiling. Flo is smiling too, facing her, but hers is the smile of battle. A pause that becomes awkward.
Margie, I want to talk to you about Sam.
Mrs. Smythe sits right of table centre. Beams.
That's awfully nice of you, dear. You know there's no subject in the world I'm so full of. Isn't he wonderful?
Does not pause for reply.
Just the minute I saw him, I said to myself, there's the man to make any woman happy.
Yes.
You know, right after dinner that night, Mr. Hart offered him $20,000 a year to work for him, and Sam, for some foolish reason, refused.
Flo, realizing why McGinnis refused, and the enormity of her own loss.
Captain Sam refused that night. What? When? What time that night?
Immediately after dinner.
Oh, what a fool I...
Oh, not such a fool. He's sailing tomorrow for South America to make a preliminary investigation of the Hart properties at $25,000 a year.
Sailing tomorrow.
Margie nods.
I'm going with him.
Mrs. Smythe rises.
You? Oh, no, I'm going with him.
Flo rises.
Margie, Sam McGinnis belongs to me.
My dear, you can't have them all, you know.
Flo facing Mrs. Smythe.
Perhaps you won't feel that way when I tell you I'm his wife.
She expects an outburst from Mrs. Smythe, but she is calm.
Yes, and you let him get away from you. You poor little fool.
I may have been a fool, but I'm still his wife.
I suppose I'm the other woman. All right, I'll be the other woman. She generally has a better time anyhow. Fortunately, the divorce will be easy to get.
You mean he'd divorce me?
Well, my dear, when a married woman goes away with another man, people don't generally believe they're just playing checkers.
Margie, I've been a fool, I admit it. A poor fool, but I've waked up. I love him. I don't feel that I can go on without him. Won't you?
Mrs. Smythe, smiling.
Do you think he'd take you back?
Flo, dumb with horror.
Take me? You mean he wouldn't take me?
Why, child, you had him. You had his love and your happiness right in your hands. And what did you do? Just because you didn't like the cut of his clothes, or the way the barber had brushed his hair, or some other fool thing that had nothing in the world to do with the man himself, you decided to break your word, kick over a contract, and ruin a man's life.
I didn't. I only wanted to...
To humiliate him and furnish yourself an excuse for kicking out. That's the trouble with about half of you wives. You think that marriage is a one-sided arrangement for your protection, care, and amusement, instead of being a job like any other job that a woman and a man have to work at to make good.
But...
You had your chance. You failed. And now the job is mine.
You refuse to give him up.
I do.
Then I'll take him away from you.
You?
Yes, because I'm his wife, and you can't take a man away from his wife if she wants him and is willing to fight for him, and I'll fight.
Goes up to left of table and returns.
But I did take him.
You? Why, you took nothing. I was just a little fool and let him go, but now I know I love him. He did love me, and I'm going to make him love me all over again. You'll see, you'll see.
Exits left upper exit. McGinnis Jr. enters right.
Well?
She's going to do this to you.
Makes gesture with her finger, come to me.
Ah.
His whole being lights up with joy and love.
And if you do just that, as you're doing now, you'll have her for a while.
I don't want her for a while. I want her for always.
Then do this.
Indicates vigorously gesture of repulsion, pushing someone away.
And drive her away from me forever?
Forever? Oh no, she's a woman.
But...
A woman, a hound, and a walnut tree. The more you beat them, the better they be.
He hesitates.
Don't believe in old sayings.
All right. Yet in business, do you cheapen the article when the customer is interested?
I didn't want to cheapen, but...
Why is it about everything but a woman a man can use common sense? Now listen. She's bored with her pretty Billy, desperately bored. She's in the middle of an awkward situation, and neither he nor she has the poise or humor to handle it. And on top of that, you come along, and I've shown her your value, and she sees what she's lost, and she's determined to beat me and get you back at the crook of her finger. She's sure of it, because she told me so.
McGinnis, for the first time, warming up and the light of battle coming into his eyes.
She told you that? I'll come at the first crook of her finger, eh?
Yes. Will you?
McGinnis, right centre, facing her.
I'll see her in.
Points down. Mrs. Smythe, left centre, facing him.
Then tell her just that.
Points down. Pressing her advantage.
You've gambled for your life. Can't you gamble for your happiness? She'll be a wonderful wife if you get her on your terms. But you're a fool to take her on her own, because she'll find out she was tricked and never forgive it. And the end will be the same. Billy, or some other Billy. You started right, but...
And I'd always dreamed marriage was a partnership.
Yes, it is. With a good senior partner.
I'll...
Flo enters, left upper.
Sorry to interrupt, but I dropped my handkerchief.
I was just going.
Shall I?
No, indeed, dear boy. I've many things to attend to.
Pauses at door. Right to Flo.
I hope, dear, you'll find your handkerchief.
She exits right.
Sam, why did you let me do it?
Do what?
Run away with Billy.
McGinnis, moving a step toward her.
You came of your own free will, didn't you?
But you were my husband. It was your duty to stop me.
How could I stop you when I didn't know anything about it?
I wanted to show you that I had the courage to do as I liked, to follow my impulses.
McGinnis sits right of her.
Well, you did it. Aren't you happy?
Sam, I've made a terrible mistake. Well, I want you to come back to me. She shan't have you. I'm your wife and I won't give you up.
How can you give up what you haven't got?
Don't, Sam.
Sam's business with hand.
Don't say that. Don't do that. It's not Margie. You don't understand.
But I do understand. I understand better than you think. Don't I know what's in the back of your mind? You'll admit I'm your husband. Come to me for a little while.
No, Sam. Always.
Nonsense. You've not changed. I've not changed. I'm the same roughneck you knew in France. The same servant who took orders in your house. If I couldn't hold you then, I can't hold you now. And I don't propose to be picked up and thrown down at any woman's whim.
I'll come back as your wife, Sam. Don't you understand? As your wife.
Yes, as my wife. To save your face. Then divorce me legally and marry Billy. No, I'm through. As far as I'm concerned, you can go to the devil.
Flo as he stalks out right.
All right, then. I'll go to the devil.
He exits. To herself.
But you'll be the devil I'll go to.
Curtain falls sharply to mark end of Scene 1. Curtain. Act 3, Scene 2. Captain McGinnis's room in the Grunwald. A typical hotel room in first-class hotel. On left, 2 windows with curtains drawn. Between the windows, a bureau with mirror. Centre of rear wall, a double bed with head against wall. Foot extending toward footlights. Entrance door from hall. Rear at right. On right, 2 doors. Upper door. Centre lower door, bathroom. A table below foot of bed. Beside bed, small table with reading light. Besides this light, there are bracket candles on either side of bureau and over bed, turned on, giving the room a warm, soft glow. A screen between the bed and window above the bureau. Time, 15 minutes after events of Scene 1. Discovered. At the rise, the stage is empty. The first thing to catch the eye must be a large suitcase placed on the table, so that the audience can clearly read on the end of it, Captain McGinnis, USA. Pitched carelessly on the table beside it are McGinnis's topcoat and hat, a suit of street clothes, soiled shirt, a collar and tie. After a distinct pause, there is a low, timid rap at the door. This rapping is repeated twice. Then the knob turns. The door is opened from without slowly, and Flo peeps in. She looks about, then pushes the door wide open, walks in, looks about the room, shakes her head in disapproval, opens the closet door, hangs up her dressing gown, goes to phone. Flo into phone.
Will you send a lady's maid, please? Captain McGinnis's room, number 369. Mrs. McGinnis speaking.
Hangs up phone, gives a little excited cough to herself, shakes her head at appearance of room, begins straightening up, hangs McGinnis's coat and hat and suit in closet, puts dirty shirt and collar in bureau drawer. A knock at door.
Come in.
Maid appears.
Yes, madam.
Will you please lock the door on the outside and leave the key in the office?
Lock the door on the outside?
Yes, so my husband won't disturb me.
Oh, yes, madam. I understand.
As Flo tips her.
Thank you, madam.
Goes to door.
I hope you all sleep well. Good night.
Flo to Maid as she exits.
Good night.
Flo seats herself in chair before the mirror, proceeds to take down her hair. She brushes her hair, turns out lights, and gets into bed. McGinnis enters, turns on lights and stands looking at Flo's picture on bureau while taking his tie off. Flo climbs out of bed and gets key from lock and puts it under her pillow. McGinnis turns, sees her, crosses to bedside.
I told you to go to the devil.
Well, here I am, and you can't put me out. Please put out those lights, Sam. They hurt my eyes.
McGinnis switches off lights. She turns on bed lamp.
Oh, Sam, I've come back to you. Won't you forgive me? I love you, Sam. I love you. I've lost all my snobbishness. I'm cured. Sam, I'm cured.
And who cured you?
Can't you guess? The best cobbler in Racine.
They embrace.
God bless you.
Curtain. End of Act 3. End of Civilian Clothes by Thompson Buchanan.